Friends, fans, and fine folk, grab your drinks and snacks and come down to the campfire for this short rest with me and my friend, ThePlayMatt. How you doing, buddy?
I am well. How do I sound? Internet, people in chat, do I sound good?
You sound fantastic. You're in the yellow, same as me, so you should be.
Brilliant.
You should be the same volume. Nope, immediately somebody's saying you're very quiet.
Yeah, that's why I ask, because that's Discord. I always have to up my gain. I don't have the same compressors and effects that I have normally with my OBS. So this should be better. This should be better. You can also right-click and turn me up via Discord, Rob. And then, it'll pump out more on your side for chat.
Wonderful. Well, it's good to have you here, man. How you doing?
I'm good. Tired, working nonstop.
Yeah.
Doing the thing.
You're on that working grind at the moment, just like got all. I mean, who's not? Who's ever not on that working grind?
Yeah.
Well, it's fantastic to have you here. Thank you very much for coming for short rest. I appreciate it. For you making time in your very busy working to actually show up and chat to me for a bit.
Hey, my absolute pleasure. Especially at 3 in the afternoon for me. Perfect. This is
perfect
great.
time.
You know,
it's 9 in the morning for me, but I just got back from Perth, which is 5 hours behind, so it kind of still feels like 4 in the morning.
Damn.
So I'm feeling it. But hey. It was still worth it to try and like force myself to get back into the schedule of being like, hey, don't sleep in just because you're tired.
No, it's hard. You have to do that first day and like reset your stream schedule, or start your sleeping schedule like from scratch. Yeah.
I thought it'd be much easier to quickly adapt because of the flight situation. I had to get up at like 3 in the morning to get the flight back, and so I was really shattered by the time I arrived here, which was 10 or 11 p.m. New Zealand time. So I was like, I'll just go straight to sleep because I'm so tired, and then my body will immediately reset. But damn circadian rhythms.
No, they don't like what we do for a living and what we do for fun. You know.
Yeah. Which is the same thing for the most part. So let's jump into it. I like to get started by saying, hey, if we're having a short rest, then we must be short resting from something. So we must be on some kind of a mission, some kind of a quest. What's going on in the fantasy of this world? What are we short resting from?
You and I are on the epic, exhausting quest, fighting against levels of exhaustion of being professional game masters for a living.
Okay.
And for doing a type of job that involves having your brain be creatively on all the time. So we're two lore bards, you and I. And we're out of spell slots constantly.
We're just constantly out of spell slots. Have we got we've got like some sort of what are they called? The quest giver. There's a word for the person who gives you quests and stuff.
Quest daddy. Yes.
We've got a quest. That's not the word I was looking for, but sure, we've got a quest daddy. We got a quest daddy that's always just like, bam, here you go, here's another one. A patron maybe the word I was looking for.
I ain't gonna be a bard without a level or 2 of warlock. Come on. That means I'm not having enough fun.
You got somebody that's like, hey, here's you want some money? You want some money? Yeah. Have this, but also do this for me and do this thing. And they're always asking for like specific performances, like perform that famous one that you do, but that requires like major image, and we're like, that costs a spell slot. So you got like, I'm out of my third level, so now I got to cast it at 4th level. So you just
they're 5th level wizards asking us things about cantrips that they can just look into their wizard book, look through the Google wizard book that they have.
Look it up. But they want to hear it from us instead, and we gotta do it, and that means using up our spell slots, which means we're constantly exhausted. Have you ever considered, speaking of spell slots and exhaustion, I saw like a home rule or something, a house rule that was like, for spellcasters, some GMs will allow them to still cast spells when they're out of spell slots, but it costs them a level of exhaustion to do so. Or I've seen variants where it's like costs them the same spell slot amount of hit points or something. So it's like still you're pushing yourself beyond your limits and like into exhaustion with it.
I can totally see the point of that. It's because being down to cantrips, no fun anymore. I tend to run games where the way it happens is there's maybe one short rest during the day. And so I instead buff the short rest classes, like Warlocks. I give them a lot of boons. When you played on my channel, I gave you a bunch of stuff because I'm like, they're not going to be a short rest, but I don't want you to suffer because of those class mechanics. And usually when I run a fight, there's something little. And even if they go ham with their spell slots on that, the biggest fight, they can be using full leveled spells every turn, and rarely will they be exhausted throughout a whole day. And when they do, I like it because it's a shock factor. When I do that in a long-standing campaign where it's like, oh, I've got nothing, I'm like, yeah, you got nothing.
Yeah, you got nothing,
but not often.
And it's 7 a.m.
Like, exactly.
It's sometimes fun in an evilish kind of way to be like, hit them with some sort of ambush right off the gate, like they are packing up their camp for the day, and bam, big ass fight, and they just use their resources up. Especially if you're trying to kind of teach your players about resource management and like the importance of that, because they're used to just going blah 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 blah, just breezing through a fight, and if you smash them at 7 a.m, they go, well, you got the rest of the day. Can we have a long rest again? Nope, not for another 16 hours.
We get to set the tone, I think, with, how important is resource management in these games, How important is combat? I don't like the type of combat that's just like, oh, we're just doing rounds against minions and stuff. Maybe in, earlier games for players to learn mechanics, I want fights to be dramatic. I want them to, to have sensitive urgency and things. And so I want people to go like, the tension starts at the beginning at round 1, not at round 2. It doesn't build itself up, right? So, yeah.
Yeah, because if your plan is like introduce something in round 2 or 3, like something even bigger, then you still need to seed that in round 1. Like you see the goblins firing things, but they're shouting over their shoulder, and they're like holding themselves back, and they're shouting something, and if nobody speaks goblin, you don't know what it is, and if you do, it's like, they're over here. Get ready. Bring Brutus. And then they know. Oh, this is not what we expected. What are they bringing? Oh fuck! We need to kill these guys and get out of here before whoever arrives. Yeah. Absolutely. So that's the sort of short rest we're having. We've found some time. Our wizards have gone off to eat their dinner, and they don't need our entertainment right now. And we're trying to get back.
We're playing a campaign that instead of like levels of exhaustion, we have different states of vulnerability to psychic damage. So brains are just going like,
I like that. I like that. You've still got the 6 levels, but like at level 1, it's just like psychic damage means if any amount of psychic damage means you also have disadvantage on a thing for a round, and then like 2 levels is like now you've got vulnerability to psychic damage, and then you've got like double vulnerability to psychic damage, and then it's like any amount of damage is considered psychic damage, and then
so like by 6th level, yeah. At 6th level, because we're dramatic, we're bards, we die in a very Shakespearean way of like grief and like heartbreak or something. Like it's like, oh, someone says something that breaks my heart, I'm dead. I literally
exactly. I was gonna say like 6 levels of this vulnerability is like any insult or slight against your work is considered psychic damage, which
instant brain shutdown.
So we are having a little short rest from that. I like to start with I like to start when I remember to do so with just an introduction, because people might be watching this and not know who you are, and or people might be listening to this on my podcast later and not know who I'm talking to. So who are you?
Whenever I say the words out loud, who am I? The answer after is 24601.
24601.
I'm ThePlayMatt. I work full time now as of January 1st as a professional game master, streamer on Twitch, as well as DM coach. I've been doing a lot of coaching for GMs and stuff, storytellers, world building, acting, prepping a game. The most popular one lately is this thing that apparently isn't in the books is, what do I do during a game, like as a GM? What do I talk about? What do I set as a scene? Like how do I pace a game and all that? How do I talk to players? And that's been kind of really cool. But yeah, I do a lot of that. And
nice. Full time. It's pretty exciting new change for you. Yeah. To have just switched it up and gone, let's make this a career. Let's focus on this.
It's been like a year-long transition.
Dragons. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, that's, the more bookings I get, the more, people support the channel, support the actual play stuff that I do. I'm planning to do a lot more in the future. It's been good. I've got a wonderful community, and I would not be able to do it without them.
What made that decision for you? Why did you go like, fuck it, now's the time?
So a couple things. I've been kind of like veering my income more towards like I've been making more doing content and pro GMing over the past several months. And been like doing less labor work. I was working as a bartender part time just to kind of make ends meet. And I started traveling a lot and realizing in the city that I lived in was very expensive. And the labor work I was doing was essentially paying my sort of rent there. And so I moved. It's a lot cheaper. My expenses are lower, and I'm trying to use that to be able to put more time into not only doing the thing but growing and finding a bigger community, and doing the social media thing and finding a bigger audience and stuff. And so I figured kind of now is never. I'm also trying to plan a move to the States at some point, and so I figured I can't stagnate with what I'm doing. I need to grow towards the career path that I want.
How long have you like known that this is something you wanted to do, like a full-time thing?
A year, 2 years.
Yeah.
I wanted to. So I have a background as an actor. I trained in musical theater. I was working in musical theater for a few years. The pandemic hit. And then I realized, looking back on it, a lot of working in musical theater is you are constantly looking for jobs. There is a scarcity in terms of jobs and well-paying jobs. We're not going to get into, how capitalism affects the arts, but it is something like that where it's like, okay, well, there's only so much work. The work doesn't pay well, And so I was like, okay, let me find a career that doesn't devalue the art that I do. And so I decided to go into streaming and Dungeons and Dragons because I'm an idiot. And I chose another career. No. During the pandemic, I started streaming. I started playing D&D more regularly, like during the pandemic, weekly with people. And I started DMing a lot, watching something like Critical Role in Dimension 20 for the first time. Me being an actor and writer, I was like, oh, I can do that? Like I can tell my own stories. I can build these worlds, I can do this collaborative type thing, this kind of ensemble work type storytelling thing, which is really, really cool. And to me, it was like, well, that's the kind of work I want to create. It's hard to be a performer and try to create work, in the theater, in TV and film when the cost is so expensive to produce literally anything, right? Without getting grants and finding companies and stuff to work with. And so I started doing some actual play stuff and I started doing well. And I was like, okay, I love this. And so I put in a couple thousand hours over the past few years, as anyone does in a trade or a craft that they enjoy. I've been doing really well with it all over the past few months and decided now's the time. I had to move out and I'm like, you know what, instead of kind of continuing the status quo a little bit, why don't I switch it up and try it? And so here we are. Here we are
at a new venture, a new crossroads. We're going on an adventure. You've just set off down the path. The town is still behind you in the rearview mirror, as it were.
I'm gonna be battered and bruised, dehydrated, and fighting Gollum within weeks.
For sure. So I like to start with talking about the name, like ThePlayMatt. Obviously, pretty self-explanatory. But is there any story there? When did you settle on that?
It's funny. I rarely get asked this question. It's just like, that's a name, cool. When I was making my Twitch profile, I was like, okay, I want a name that is like, that's not something that's too like a brand thing that I'm probably going to want to change, like a username on like Xbox or something that I've had in the past.
Right, yeah.
And so
which a lot of my guests have been.
Yeah.
And it's like, oh, where did you come up with Sansa XI 349? They're like, it was, I really regret it. I wish it was, it was my Final Fantasy name.
And so I was like, I want something simple. Like, I know I want it to be based around like gaming and like tabletop and stuff like that. And I've had a lot of like pseudonyms because I was a camp counselor for years. I worked with kids and teenagers, and so my camp counselor name I was called Slash at one point. I was called Hercules at one point. And so I was like, you know what, the playmat, like a playmat, like, for Magic the Gathering or for, just like a game mat for, like, tabletop and stuff. And I was like, all right, 1 or 2 T's. I'm like, fuck it, 2 T's. And I just went with that. And I kind of like it. Yeah. Simple.
It works. It works. It's I love a good play on words with the name, because then it's memorable enough. Yeah. People actually know what the name is.
I have a common ass name, so I figured I would own it and just make it silly,
For sure. I really need to go back and talk about Hercules though. What was Hercules? What were you buff? Were you like, what's the?
No, real quick.
Was it an ironic name because you were skinny like a twig? What?
Yeah. No. I'll get into a sec. I think Chad is saying your gain's a little high. They're hearing the trucks in your background.
God.
Sorry, my streamer like audio
Always the
file
case.
like you're fine here. I hear you perfectly, but just checking in on that. So I worked for a camp for like 6 years, and Slash was my chosen name because I played guitar, and I'm like, yeah, it's cool, like from Guns N' Roses. And this one was Hercules. This camp I worked at, they had new names every summer, which is very confusing for kids who come back, but that was the thing. And we were all based on Disney characters. And I was like, well, Hercules is my favorite. And I figured, why not?
Hercules is the best. It's amazing.
I had a co-counselor that was like a junior counselor, and they were called Pegasus, and we're like, it was just kind of like our duo, right? Yeah.
Yeah, that's good. I love that. I love that movie. I mentioned it to AJ recently, back in October when I was over in Perth then, and we were like, let's watch it. it's one of those that's like I could probably quote the whole thing because I've seen it so many times as a kid. But I haven't seen it in years, so let's watch it again. And we just had a little like indoor picnic date and had a little sit down, made like a little fort on the couch and watched Hercules. It was amazing. It's still such a good film. Like even to this day.
Danny DeVito, James Woods, like the voice cast is just so stellar. The animation is stellar. It's so good.
It's funny though because like even as a kid I was like, this is a great movie, but it's completely wrong. Like as far as any of the.
Of course, little Rob Hartley was sitting there like, that's like, completely wrong.
That's not what happened. Mythology. He should be called Heracles for one thing. Like
your parents are there looking at their 5-year-old child like, what the fuck?
What the fuck is wrong with this kid? Yeah, it just kind of bothered me that the entire thing is Greek mythology, and yet they use the Roman name for him. It should be Heracles. And then obviously they couldn't really make a Disney film out of hey, so Zeus went off and had his sexual assault affairs as he does with other mortals, and Hera hated him for it because he's cheating on her, and so she's trying to kill the kid. And it's like, okay, you gotta soften it up for Disney. Make the god of the underworld the bad guy, even though he's usually just the most chill of the gods. He's like, nah, I'm cool down here. I'm cool. I feel
what's great about that is like that is just such a thing to do with Greek stories. You know what I mean? Like so many stories are the Greek stories. What is it? Freaking Percy Jackson.
Yeah.
Like that's very not accurate to anything that is like if you read any like Greek plays.
Yeah.
None of it's accurate. But also the Greek plays, the stories needed to change because oh boy, there's a reason why we call it Deus Ex Machina when it's like oh shit, the god just saved the day. I guess plot doesn't matter. But to be fair, they were drunk on wine, eating grapes, and just having like tons of like orgies all the time. So they didn't have time to think about stories.
They were just like, hey, did it work? I don't remember. I don't remember how it started. But there's a god now. Here's a
There's gods and monologues.
Sums up the Greek tragedies and such. Gods and monologues. So you mentioned being a camp counselor. When did that begin? How did that come about?
That was my first job. When
how long were you doing that?
16 to 21. I would just do that during the summers. I'd go to school, and then during the summers I'd work at camp. I also to take a job during school to make some money. I worked in like kind of a kids indoor play place as a kind of like a counselor. The expression in French is an animator, not as someone who animates, but as someone who is like basically like a host and runs games. And so I don't know, like the best way to translate it is a counselor, but counselor sounds like I am there to make sure your psychology is okay, to make sure like you're on the right path. An animator is more of an entertainer / sort of babysitter of sorts, right? From large groups of kids.
I had the same job, but at the zoo. And my title was the experience products facilitator, meaning the products that you can buy that are experiences rather than things, which is like the behind the scenes stuff, the sleepovers, the birthday parties, the tours. And I facilitated those things. So I was running all of the tours and stuff.
To add on to how you and I just have so many similarities, the play place I worked at during the year birthdays was themed as a zoo. I'm not going to name it on screen, but it was themed as a zoo, and zoo was in the title of it. So it's kind of funny.
That's funny. Yeah, we do have a lot of similarities there. So it's always funny to me as well that like often the camp counselors and stuff are like barely older than the kids that they are counseling. Yes. 16-year-old, they can look after kids. They're responsible enough to be like in charge of all of these kids' welfare.
I was 18 when I first started working with like 13 to 14, 15-year-olds.
Right.
But an 18-year-old with this like a beard, like the kids thought I was like 24, right?
Yeah.
Like minimum. You know, I've looked the same age for over a decade, which is great. I'll take it. You know, but yeah, no. I think the camp counseling thing is so intrinsic to DMing and basically being able to organize people,
Right.
organize your thoughts, make sure people are kind of following, look into like, you know, is everybody paying attention? Kind of that train of thought where you're switching in between things. It was kind of huge for that for me. Like looking back on it now as a realization, it was huge to kind of the group management aspect of being a GM. Yeah.
So what made you be like, that's enough, that's the last year? What was the I'm not doing that anymore?
Well, the last, so funny enough, when I was working as a camp counselor, you know, you get paid minimum salary, and so the money is not great. You do it because you love it, and the culture's there, and it's the community's there. You know, those counselors become your friends for the summer. And the last time I did it while living in an apartment kind of in the city of Montreal. And I was like, oh, I can't afford anything. I'm working too much. It's an exhausting job, right?
Right.
It is physically, mentally, and vocally exhausting. And I was like, okay, well, I can't do something like this anymore. And then after that I moved to Toronto, and I didn't have summers because my musical theater school was essentially 3 semesters a year, 3 full semesters. And so that wasn't something I could do. And also I was like, I need to start doing kind of work that pays more for less time, because I do not have time, you know, with theater school and everything to be doing that, right?
That's a full-on theater school, 3 semesters.
Oh yeah. No,
like,
it was intense.
Yeah, you have to work everything, including summer. That's insane.
I did 17-hour days. I would get to school at 7:30 to warm up for dance class. I would leave and go to work at around like 6, then work from 6 to about midnight, be home by 1 a.m., up the next morning at 6:30. I would pull 17-hour days, roughly just about 4 days a week. So it wasn't that bad. It was only 4 days a week.
That's too bad. That is bad.
No.
That's more than half of the week.
It was traumatic. It created a cycle of burnout that I think led itself into the pandemic. And, you know, me realizing so many things like, I need to be medicated for ADHD because it's insane that I'm doing this in the first place. And just so many aspects of my life where I'm like, oh boy, this is a lot. You know, this is too much. And trying to figure out how to mold life around it to do the things that I enjoy, that I'm good at, without doing that, you know, burning out.
Yeah.
It's rough.
Man, it's so unhealthy. Like that schools like that will promote that level of this is how you need to be going into this industry. Like,
their logic, which was flawed, which, you know, that's how the industry is. You're always go, and I'm like, no, it's not. There's not enough jobs. Nope. There's not enough interesting jobs. So it's like you're not auditioning all the time. You know what I mean? What you are getting is something sent the night before, which makes no sense to have a good performance. The whole industry, that's why I left it.
Yeah.
Because I wasn't, like, it wasn't for me. It wasn't creative enough in terms of, like, I'm actually doing things I enjoy. Yeah. It's more like I'm a worker in an industry. And I'm like, that's fine, but there's got to be a balance, you know? And I was like, yeah, no, man, this is not
creating when you're a cog in the machine sort of thing. You're not creating. You're helping somebody else with their creative vision. Yeah. Which, if you're all on the same page, can be great. Like, if you're on the same page, you feel like you're still creating. You feel like you're contributing. But if you're just like, I'm just a meat puppet that they can be like, do this, go there, saying this.
I'll be a meat puppet for the right price, and it was not the right price. You know?
Yeah, I get that totally.
Yeah.
So you said the camp counselor thing was your first job, and then you went straight from there into like theater school sort of stuff. How long did you know you wanted to be an actor? Is it like an all your life sort of thing?
No, I went into college. We have this thing in Quebec. So I grew up in Quebec, and I just lived in Ontario. This in Canada, provinces. Google them. I just lived in Ontario for 9 years to the day. And on January 1st, I moved back to Quebec to essentially pursue this full time and, you know, save money. And I'm traveling a lot too, so not having the crazy rent cost is, I don't have to pay for an apartment that I'm not at half the month, right? And so I kind of had ideas of being an actor when I was a kid, and then it was this thing where, like, Matt, you're too good at math to go into the arts. It was. Yep. You pursued it in grade 10 when it was like, okay, now you actually have to be doing work. I was in advanced maths, and I'm like, okay, so there's 2 hours a night of homework, no chance. And my kind of focus as a 15-year-old kid with ADHD was like, oh, I don't want to do this anymore. I want to play guitar. I want to, play games and stuff. And so I stopped, and I still passed the like regular math, but I was like, yeah, no. When I was getting 95% average and I didn't have to do any work, then I liked it. But it wasn't something that I was like enjoying the process of learning, right?
Naturally good at not enjoying learning it. I'm saying we're the same. We're the same there. Because I didn't pursue maths not until I was an adult, not until I was a mature student. I went back to do maths because I started knowing that I was kind of like a creative mind, always away with the fairies, making up my own stories and stuff. And then I decided to pursue acting once I discovered acting around 12, 13, somewhere around there.
Always away with the fairies? Yeah. So you were reading smut as a teenager. Okay, cool.
Oh yeah. Obviously, like all of the fairy stories. And then he said the magic words, and his schlong doubled in size. They use the word.
So Rob actually wrote Akatar. It wasn't whoever the author's name is.
Get the revenue from it then.
Yeah. Gotta sue him.
So I was like, actor, let's go with this full time sort of thing. And my dad was like, yeah, but you're so good at maths, you should probably keep that up in the background, just as as a fallback. It's like I started it for like half a year doing the AS levels at like age 16-ish because I dropped out of high school as soon as I could. I didn't drop out. I finished the compulsory years of high school, which in England was up till the age of 16. And then most people stay on and do the last 2 years of high school, your AS levels and your A levels. And then that leads you into the age for university, and people just go on to university. But that's mostly for people who don't really know what they want to do, or they've got like an idea in mind and they're like, I need this degree for it. The majority of people around my peers were like, I don't know what I'm doing, so I'm just going to stall for time by doing the last 2 years of high school and then going into university doing some sort of sociology or something to be like, I don't know.
High school does a terrible job at like actually having kids be interested in the things they want to be interested in. Because I mean, I can go on a 1 hour rant about that, but essentially I also didn't know. I was I went to school in Quebec, which is very different than the rest of North America. The rest of Canada kind of models the States a bit more. So we graduate high school at grade 11, which is I was 17. And we have this thing called CEGEP. CEGEP is essentially a 2-year university program. It's super public funded. My tuition for that was like nothing, but which is great. It gives you a chance to actually try stuff out. I went in social sciences my first semester with a focus on psychology. I was very interested in psychology, kind of interested in history as well. Looking back on it, I wish I paid more attention to sociology because it's like the most important thing for me as a world builder now. When I got there, I caught the bug, met some theater folks. I was a budding singer, and so I auditioned for a musical, switched over to the creative arts program, which was great. It allowed me to take a video class, radio classes, kind of just dip my toes a little everywhere. Did that, and then you go into university, and a lot of the bachelor's degrees are 3-year long, and so you tend to, if you keep on track, graduate your bachelor's degree at the same time as most other people would in other provinces. But I didn't like the program there. It was a Bachelor of Fine Arts, which typically those classes are like longer lecture type classes. You get 4 to 5, per semester, which doesn't lend itself to, I think, acting training. Shorter, more classes, less homework, less theory, more hands-on, conservatory style training, which is why I left and I went to Toronto. Worked a lot more effectively. So after like a year there, I was gonna leave, and then my young ego, I got casted a bunch of shows as a first year, and I was like, well, I must continue here. And did the shows and went like, oh yeah, no, my soul is dead again. I need to switch schools. And so I went through a few different styles of programs and learned different styles of things and did musical theater. It was intense and worked in that for a while. And then as I was getting into D&D, I was like, no, this is just the thing. This is just D&D, as a, gateway drug to tabletop. To me, D&D is just a language we all speak, and it's just it's the English of tabletop. The medium of storytelling and ensemble work and that kind of improv and diving into the emotions and how the acting can get really, really fun and good because you can build so much over time subtly that doesn't need to follow like narrative lenses of other mediums. So I don't know. There's just so much that I enjoyed in some personal campaigns and trying to find a way to get that into a space that people have like very short attention spans for is something I'm gonna kind of look forward to over the next while.
Yeah, interesting. So you sort of pursued a similar sort of trajectory as me with the academia kind of stuff, and then going, no, actually, I want to pursue this creative stuff. Was there, between the theatre and the D&D, was there ever like a, let's fall back on my talent for maths, my talent for academia? Was there ever like a thought of, let's get a quote unquote real job?
No, because I didn't have any kind of qualifications in terms of like, degrees in those things with real jobs. And so I worked a lot of labor jobs and service jobs, like bartending and things like that. I could always, there's certain fields where you can kind of get ready for that field in like 6 months to a year. But I knew that would be 6 months to a year of me being very miserable for something that's going to make me very miserable. And
was there never like a let's go back to university and actually get those qualifications? No?
After amassing debt and essentially going over 2 sort of programs, 2 years of university and 2 years of a private college, I was like, there's no way. And also just kind of seeing how it's just not worth the money. Like I will tell people the program that I did, I was like, don't do it. Hire private coaches, get specific people that are good, that you can vet, that you can choose, and pay more, do less, and don't be in a class with 15 other people.
Yeah.
Be in a class of like smaller select people, one-on-one coachings, like get you the bang for your buck. Those programs, like looking back on them, I was like in the school, I'm like, oh man, these are not really well designed. And then, a little bit after, I'm like, okay, is that just my bias? 6 years later, no, I felt that way for a freaking reason, right? Some classes were great, some were not, and it just felt like there was a lot of bloating and, I that's the struggle, man. I think that's why I bartended for so long. It's like it's either something like this, adapting and changing, or nothing.
At the drama school, there was a lot of like, oh, some of the stuff won't make sense to you now, but like you'll get it. It'll suddenly click for you in like 10 years, or like you'll be appreciative of all this in like 10 years. And even at the time, I was like, seems like a bit of a shitty system to be like, this will feel worth it in about 10 years time. And I'm nearly 14 years out of graduating that drama school, and I'm like, no, I'm still at the point where I'm like, I kind of I don't regret going, but if I was to get a do-over with all the information I've got now, I wouldn't do it. Like it wasn't worth it.
This is a scathing thing to say, but I think it's harsh but true. Of some of these teachers is, if you cannot explain it to me, if you cannot explain why you're doing what you're doing, what is going on, then you don't understand it enough to teach it.
Yeah.
It's if we're doing an exercise and even if like you're trying an exercise as an acting teacher and it's not landing with the student, they're not being able to do the thing, you need to stop and adapt. I've seen so many teachers just try to do an exercise because there's no pedagogy. Most actors don't have most acting teachers or teachers in any of the fields around acting, movement and stuff are terrible at pedagogy. And so their classes are overly bloated too. So you need to figure out, and I think that's why private coaches, and like I've been starting to do private coaching as a GM, and I'm like, if I'm going to do this, I need to explain why I'm saying what I'm saying, right? What is the theory behind, and in a way that's not like I'm trying to make content. I'm not trying to make like a bloated piece of like a video on this stuff. It's how do I concisely and clearly say what you need to do and why you need to do it, followed by anecdotes, followed by, data and stats and things, right? And so with acting teaching, it was if you do a session with a student and they're not getting the thing, because you need time sometimes.
Yeah.
A lot of acting and singing and like those arts, you need to let things kind of like mold into your body to learn them. Right? I became much better at singing after theater school because the lessons finally, when I wasn't, burning myself out crazily, dropping into my body. And so these teachers, they couldn't explain, this is why you're doing what you're doing. This is where the blockage is happening. And then find a way it's very raw and vulnerable to do this teaching to make them feel comfortable while doing it. And so a lot of teachers just didn't have the training for it, in my opinion. The voice teachers that teach not singing voice, but like acting voice, and opening up, your diaphragm and allowing yourself to become emotional. The kind of things where, like, as an actor, the crying on command thing, it's not about the crying on command. It's about accessing and going to that place. It's a muscle that you train. Those teachers usually went through specific styles of training to do that and were better at explaining those things. Some of the other teachers I've had, it just felt like they were trying stuff and they didn't have pedagogy. looking back on it. And like if things worked for some students, they did, but it was throwing a dart at a wall, and our tuition was too expensive to have that program. And that was one of the better programs I'd been in. So it was like, man, it was looking back on, I'm like, gosh darn. But you learn a lot from that.
It's real unfortunate that like teaching isn't better incentivized and better rewarded as a career option for people, and is much more seen worldwide, it seems, as a backup path for too many people,
because of capitalism and ego,
which creates like, this feeling of like those who can't do teach. And it seems horribly reductive to be that way, but I do know from experience that was always the case. Like that's always how I pictured it. Like, oh, if acting doesn't work out, I can always teach it. And that's how I noticed with a lot of the people I went through drama school with. They didn't succeed in acting because they didn't have what it takes. They weren't in the top 5% of the class in terms of their skills and talent and their charisma.
Or they didn't look a certain way.
They didn't look
so
a certain
superficial.
way. Whatever it is that meant that they didn't get the jobs, whatever, they went into teaching. And it's like that's a horribly backward system where the people who aren't the best at the thing are not the ones teaching the thing. They're the people who are not necessarily good at the thing itself end up teaching it, and so they don't have the training to be like, how do you actually teach it well?
The only things that are like monetized well when it comes to teaching is because especially like in America and somewhat in certain parts of Canada, if things are less completely publicly funded, then the morality is a little bit out the window, and we start justifying what is worth a cost in terms of, it's all capitalism, it's all hierarchy. It's they're not going to put value into something that isn't going to produce money on the outside. It's also it's a lot easier to, and I'm going to get into very, very, very anti-capitalist talk here, to make a certain population believe things are not good for them if they're not educated in history, sociology, psychology as well. Psychology and understanding your own feelings, processing your own feelings. Where are you putting your rage, in an outward way in the world, and that's what makes world building so fun. Understanding all these things, bringing it back to tabletop and stuff, right? But there is just something about how education is not valued because of that. It's not valued because it's the teachers are not producing a product at the end of the day, and the people who fund the things, that the politicians usually in place, if you look at their platforms and stuff, usually sitting at a center to right thing, do not value those things. Center in terms of what to be center in the political spectrum still is pretty pro-capitalist and pretty pro-business. Right, and that is teaching and social programs are de-incentivized, and so it is just seeping slowly more and more. My brother is a teacher, and he just went on strike, because they were asking for a raise. It's ridiculous how little teachers make, even in my province that is generally has a lot more social programming than the rest of Canada, especially in education and post-secondary education. University, like bachelor degrees in my province of Quebec are half the price of Ontario, and Ontario's is probably half to a third of the price of the United States, right? Which makes no sense. The cost analysis of it makes absolutely no sense.
The funny thing was as well, I saw something a little while back that was like one of the pushbacks against like teachers getting raises and stuff, when these people who are like, you're basically glorified babysitters, you shouldn't be getting paid that much, sort of thing, and
those people are horrible.
And it was a teacher's response being like, all right, that's a terrible thing to say, but let's go with it and take that to its extreme. You're saying I'm basically a babysitter? Let's look at what babysitters earn. And then they broke down like, I've got this many children in my class that I'm babysitting, and let's ignore all of the work that I do to like lesson plan and try and think about these kids when I'm not actually at work and all of the stuff that I do, and let's just look at the hours that I'm actually at work with a class of 30 kids, and this and this, and these are the hours I'm doing with 30 kids, and blah, blah, and they broke it down. It's like, if I was a babysitter, I'd be earning $1 an hour or something like this at the end of it, and I was like, how about raise it to the minimum wage of what I'd be getting? I'd be earning more than like if I was a babysitter and I was earning as much as babysitters' rates are, then I'd still be earning 3 times as much as I'm actually making. It's a system that like some of the best teachers I've ever had have been the people who you can tell wanted to teach, had a passion for teaching. They didn't do it as a backup plan. It was never a backup plan. It was their plan all along. And then they get into it. They realize that the actual teaching portion of the job isn't the part that they actually enjoy. And there's so much more to the teaching than just the actual like bit they've got passion for, and they've got to do all this other bullshit, and they've got to jump through hoops that are ridiculous, and they've got to, here's new incentives that some new study has decided that this is how people learn better, and so they got to do this thing, but there's nothing being dropped off of their workload, it's just being added onto their workload.
Yep.
And so they're just getting more and more and more stuff for less and less pay, and then they end up dropping out of it. Like some of my favorite teachers were like excellent, but they burned out like the brightest stars die quickest. Like some of my favorite teachers at drama school were like my voice teacher Darcy Smith. He was a Canadian fella. He came over like specifically for the school. He was there for like 2 years and then was like, man, this is a terrible environment. This is not what I want to be doing. And he went back to the States. Yeah, it was. Wow. It's just not a good system. So we've had a similar experience going through the tertiary education system in the
Yes.
in drama school. As I say, like I was pushed to like keep going with maths as well, but I was always good at it when I enjoyed it. Like just I always enjoyed it when I was just naturally good at it. It was the only at my high school we used to get report cards that were that we had 2 grades for, an effort grade and an achievement grade. And it was obviously a more subjective thing for the effort grade, but the teacher would be like, you can tell he's putting in all the work and he's like really trying. He's just not achieving. So like a lot of my grades were like C for achievement, but like A for effort. And my mum and dad would always be like, I don't give a shit about the achievement grade as long as you're putting in A's for effort, we don't care.
Good.
Maths for me was always the only subject that I ever got a higher grade for achievement than my effort. I was always like A plus for maths. I was always like A plus for maths and like a B or a C for effort. Like the teacher would be like, I don't know how he does it because he's clearly like not paying attention. He's barely doing anything. He's like doodling during the class. He's distracting other people. But then he comes to a test and he's like, bam, all the answers are correct.
It's logic. It's just,
it's just applied logic.
And listen, it served well because now when we're at a table and we want to shave off about 7 minutes in a 4-hour session, we can just do quick maths for our players who are just like stunned to look at what's 21 plus 13, right? This is where
my plus stuff comes in, and some people love it, some people hate it in my VLDL stuff. But like I'll get them to roll, they go 17, I go 17 plus stuff hits, roll damage. Like I'll just cut out the add up your modifiers. Because I know
we're running a show here, right?
Yeah, like AC's 14, which means if you roll a 12 or more, I know that you're guaranteed to hit. If I know what at this level, your proficiency bonus is a +4, so I know you've got at least a +4 on your attack. I just quickly go, that's close enough. And on the other end of the scale, if you roll a 2, I know that plus your modifier, that's not gonna be enough. Like, so I'm just like 2 plus stuff misses. It's only really for a few numbers in the middle that I'm like, all right, what's your modifier? Actually, do the maths for me.
It's one of those things where like running a game on a show versus running a game. If I'm running a game for new people, I'm gonna break it down slowly so they can learn what the thing is. But it's like if I'm running a game for a player and they roll, they're like 17, and then you have to look at the modifier to see what the thing is.
Yeah.
I'm gonna do that thing because I'm like, okay, you're not that you're not prepared. You're not prepared. Where it's like, okay, you don't know what the thing is. That's fine. We can speed it up. Oh, 17. I know the AC 16. Cool. You don't even have to look at your modifier. I know you hit, right? Just to move things along.
And sometimes it's just the fact that like, because I have no disdain for people who are bad at maths. Like I've done it and taught it because I used to be a tutor at my school as well, like a PA kind of a thing.
I tutored in high school,
Yeah, and so like I have enough experience knowing that just I experience numbers differently to a lot of people. Like I feel them. I feel the connections and the relationships that numbers have on like an instinctive level. So I can just like I don't have to do the calculation most of the time. I just know that 7 plus 7 plus 8's 15 because it's just like an association in my head. It's not like I'm actually having to do anything in my head. But I know a lot of people do and go, oh, I have to actually add them up and I have to understand.
It's muscle memory.
Yeah, and so
it's really just muscle memory, right?
And so for some people, I've been playing with them for years. I know that they know how a modifier is calculated and stuff, but they still have to look at their sheet and remind themselves, okay, 13 plus 8 is, and you see them counting it on their fingers. And if it's a slow paced session, then that's fine. And if it's not, you can just be like, move it up.
Depends on the style too, right? Like I think I tell GMs that I coach, your most important skill is not the charisma ones, it's insight. right?
Yes.
You know, you're playing to be insightful. You're trying to be like, oh, is this player struggling with something? You know, what are they having fun on? Also, insight check. This person's been monologuing for a while, or doing this thing they've been kind of taking me to the scene. How's this person feeling about this, right? And yes, putting charisma in with that and being very explicit about the things that you want to say to these people, right? And like, you know, explicit, like, hey, we're trying to parse time here. This is exactly how we want to do this thing. Actually, I looked up one of your short rests just to see kind of the time frame and stuff, and I saw you an M from Blackwater on. And M taught me this thing about we had a bunch of really cool chats about, you know, in group communication being, especially when you're playing with like a tight knit group, and you know you want to do check-ins and stuff when you're working on a lot of content. What we do is you're improvising storytelling. And so certain people have certain ideas about it in their head, and unless we talk about it, there's a lot of demand, and there's a lot that implicitly happens in the way we improvise stuff that we maybe need to like unpack and stuff. And so she told me the expression, be explicit, not implicit. So be very like, hey, this is and that involves as a person trying to process your feelings and why you feel, what you think, but always being explicit with, like, especially with pro GM clients. Hey, this is the thing going on. Cool. Let's just, because you're trying to make, you know, everybody at the table have a good time, right? I tend to run games where I'm hired by a group. I'm hired by one person usually who pays for the whole group, or they sparse money. That's how my website works. I just started getting on StartPlaying.games where I'm maybe playing with people who don't know each other, and it's been a while since I've done that. With not creators. And so I do it sometimes, and I just know to make sure that I am setting boundaries across the table, and I'm kind of respecting everyone's boundaries, and I'm kind of putting myself in between as the boundary person in between those people too, because it's my job, right? And so that involves insight. Long tangent to talk about insight.
No, I think you're 100% right. I've not really thought about it like that before, but yeah, the insight skill is something that you definitely need. You need to be able to read people at your table. And that, I think, comes from our acting background. That is a huge thing that you need to be able to do, because as especially a theatre actor rather than a screen actor, because you have an audience and you need to be constantly monitoring with direct real-time feedback. Are the audience with us? Are they following along? Are they laughing at the right points? Are they gasping when we need them to? Like, are they enjoying it? Especially for smaller theatres, if you're in a thing where you can actually see people's faces rather than just like stage lights, so you can read people's expressions. Are people checking phones? Are they talking to each other? Are they not engaged? Sort of thing. And I think a lot of that comes into the DM work that we do now, is to be, because there's a lot of performative elements, especially during like exposition scenes where you're like, okay, I've written a thing now. These guys have had their time around the campfire, and then they move in, and this guy's giving them the quest, and we're reading it. If you're just looking at your thing and reading it, and you're not paying any attention, if you're not putting any of your effort into insight checking the players, then you're not going to be seeing, are they actually listening to this exposition? Did any of them actually take a note? Did I see them pick up a pen and like write down when I said the name of the guy that they've got to go find? Because if not, maybe that's a little note that I can put to myself of like, they didn't take a note, so make sure to use this name a little bit more in conversation so that they at least hear it again. If they did take notes, then it's like, okay, maybe I just don't say it again, because then it's going to pay off more when they look back over their notes and go, I think I wrote that down once, and then it's like, oh wow, I only said it the one time, but you wrote it down. And so you can take all sorts of tiny little subtle hints if you're insight checking your players constantly.
I think it made me think of, not every game is super performative, is like, you know, actor, like, you know, scene based. A lot of it, like, some people are less into doing voices and will role play in a more meta commentary way, where it's like, my character does this, they describe this thing to you, or they basically talk to you about this quest they want you to go on. But regardless, no matter what, I think there's no escaping, there's an aspect of improv and acting in role and storytelling whatsoever, because you're describing action, you're describing things happening, and a lot of like the way, you know, you look at theater and a scene is there's action and subtext, right? You know, what is the thing this person is doing? If you're in a scene as an actor and you're not talking, you have to go like, what is my character? What is the action happening? The action that is happening is going to influence the subtext and the things. It's more complicated than that too, but I think it's something to, because a lot of people I think put a lot of pressure, like, oh, I'm not a performer. I'm not a performer. I can't do this acting thing.
Yeah.
You can. You just don't have to do it like someone else does. You got to do it like you want to do it. You know.
Yeah. You got to find how you do it. So with all of this background leading up to it, we haven't actually gotten yet to you getting into D&D and tabletop role-playing games. How did that come about? What was your first introduction to D&D?
I think it's like sparsed over years, so it's an epic. I played what I think was
I mean,
third
we are
edition.
lawbards. It's got to be an epic.
Yep. Yeah. Okay. And 1 sec. Let me get my guitar. I'll sing. No. I think I played what was probably like third or 3.5, like in the early 2000s, probably around 2003, 2004. I didn't know the rules. I think someone told me what I had to roll. I just played a big old barbarian. Didn't matter. Loved it. When I was a kid, I always remember.
Just your friend group, or was it in like a
it was like a cottage with a friend, and like their older cousin was kind of running the game. I think I was maybe 12 at the time.
Yeah.
But looking back on it, it started when I was a kid. I preferred imaginary games. I wasn't the person to be like, oh, I'm gonna play sports and stuff. I liked karate because
I also did karate.
Fucking hell, Rob. God damn it. All right. Should have at least shaved today or something.
I'll start to put on a French Canadian accent in a minute as well. This is a fake voice. My real voice is French Canadian.
Do I sound French Canadian?
No.
No. I mean, I mostly spoke English growing up, but kind of bit of both. Actually, coming back here after 9 years in an English province is. Anyways, I digress. We were talking about how I got a tabletop. I would play a lot of imaginary games, and I would essentially just like with friends, we make up characters, we make up scenarios, we make up worlds. When I played with toys, I would like create these big scenarios and things. And flash forward to, I think it was 2012, 2013, I watched Acquisitions Incorporated with my roommates, and we were like, we're going to do that. Right. And so a bunch of us got together, we played a game, one of our friends ran a game. I wasn't vibing, so I decided, like most gyms do, I'm going to run a game. So I ran a game. I had this concept for, this way before I got into world building, but for a world in darkness where the vampires, the werewolves, all that, they were not the bad guys. I was very I was already a fucking huge socialist. I was very anti-religion too. It was in my very it's stupid, which it still is. But just the Crusaders, they're the bad guys, right?
Yeah,
something like that, and like the idea of the Scarlet Crusade and stuff from Warcraft, came to mind. And fast forward a decade, you got to play in that world. When I actually sat down and started world building it, over a campaign and hours and hours and hours of world building. But I played, I think, 4th edition for a little bit. I quite enjoyed it because I'm a pretty tactical person.
Yeah.
And I'm someone who sure, let's do the thing. Also, their monster manual's a lot better for GMs.
I've heard.
I got to sit down and watch Mendari go through the 4th edition monster manual and watch her jaw kind of go like, just how. I'm so sorry to say this. Really the monster manual for 5th edition D&D just needs a lot of love and work. Yeah. I basically homebrew everything, and it's my math brain that thinks about the action economy part of things. But I went to theater school. I moved to Ontario first 2 years. Couldn't touch any hobbies. I think I had like a Sunday afternoon once a month where working and everything. And a little bit after I graduated, I really wanted to get into it. Immediately I went on tour. I toured The Little Mermaid across Canada. And I was wanting to get into it then. I was the prince.
Nice.
And The Little Mermaid. It was kind of like I call it the knockoff Little Mermaid. I was Prince Frederick. It's a musical with original music based off the tale for copyright stuff. But I toured that.
Based off the tale rather than based off the Disney?
Yeah, based off the tale. She was going to turn to foam
she turns to foam?
No. She got saved in the end and all that, through the power of music and friendship. And
did you have any things that you look back on and you're like, man, it's not cool that he doesn't even notice that she can't speak, and he's just like leans in for a kiss without consent.
Listen, it's a tale of toxic masculinity. He was like, yeah, but she hot though, so we're just gonna kind of
we're
gonna jump over this.
Oh,
yeah.
Score.
No, he was just an understanding prince who was like, she's mute. That's okay. There's nothing wrong with that. She might not be the girl whose voice I fell in love with, but it's cool. But yeah, when I got back 2017,
I read The Little Mermaid as a Robert Reed's years ago, and
nice.
It became somewhat infamous of the people who have been on my channel for the longest time. I'll know about the Scouse Mermaid, because during Robert Reed's, whenever I'd get to a voice, I'd be like, all right, I need a voice for this character. What should they sound like? And people would suggest an accent or whatever. and we got to
Nice.
the mermaid, and it's like this fisherman falls in love with this mermaid. It wasn't the Little Mermaid. I think it was the fisherman and I think maybe it's just called The Fisherman and the Mermaid. It's an Oscar Wilde story, and it was and somebody was like Scouse. This beautiful sounding mermaid, and it's described as like, and she opens her mouth, and the most beautiful sound he's ever heard comes out, and I was like, "Hey mate, how are you? You know, how's it going? It's good to see you," sort of thing. And it was, it cracked me the fuck up. I think it's a clip still somewhere on my stream, but it cracked me up something rotten, and I couldn't stop laughing, and it was just it was the funniest stream ever, and it became this whole thing.
If anybody in chat is in my Discord, find it. Shove it in my Discord. I want to watch it.
I started singing like, "Look at this stuff, isn't it neat? Wouldn't you think my collection's complete?" Started like just joking about like being a scout collection, and like being a scouser who's like stealing stuff and just like having like a collection of shit because they've just all the stuff they've stolen. Man, it's funny stuff. Anyway. You were touring with The Little Mermaid.
Yeah, The Little Mermaid came back 2017. I was like, I really want to like start playing. So I started like doing some one-shots and things. It was really fun, and I would play with actors because I would play usually with my casts of the shows I was doing, and so it was fun. You know, immediately when I found something like Critical Role, and I was like, what is this kind of storytelling?
Right.
This is dope. So I was already world building a bit then, but I was like, I really want to do more. Started a campaign, learned many lessons in just GMing, setting boundaries, knowing what you can do.
To prep?
Yeah,
prepping way too much and realizing I didn't need to do all that.
Well, prepping the wrong things too. You know, like to me, it's like you can't. You can, if you want, put a bunch of work. You know, you can put 100% of work and 20% of it will get used, or you can learn to put 25% work and 20 will get used, or you can learn to do 5% work and improvise the other 15%. You know, what is the work that matters for you, right? Yeah. Or you can learn to do a bulk of work, world building.
Yeah.
And then use that to pull and take stories from, right?
Yes.
Which is what I tend to do more now. I don't plan my games, especially the one-shots. When the one-shots are with you guys, I don't know your characters yet. You know, sometimes I get a little blurb or theme, and I'm like, cool. I have a generalized, really simple plot because I want to get this done in under 4 hours because that's how games go. And then I kind of start feeling the vibe off you guys, and then kind of taking bits for that, and magically making it work with battle maps that I've already plugged in the game. But yeah, 2017 I really got into it for like bit by bit, and only by 2019 I started a campaign. Did a whole campaign mostly over online over the pandemic. Ended that campaign in I think December 2021, and it was amazing. It was beautiful. Started another campaign. Did that for a while until I kind of just had the burnout. It was the investment was a bit different. I think all of us doing this weekly for months on screen, going back to our lives, getting busier again was a bit difficult, right? Yeah. And so it was that, but I think what really got me more into like just GMing was the fact that I'm like, okay, I think the more I invest in this, the more I can just not just do this full time as a career, but eventually do more of the things that I want to do. Like I want to tell stories with this. I think tabletop as a medium of, I always say it's an ensemble medium of storytelling is something that I really want to explore. And I just find there's something so lovely about not being the protagonist of a story for me as a GM and supporting those protagonists and creating those those moments of emotional catharsis over time, sowing seeds in. And as an artist and writer, there's nothing better than having a source of inspiration, especially when it's like your players. I do put a lot of pressure on like my campaign players to do work, because I'm like, if I'm going to do all this work for storytelling, I want good creative fodder, and I want you to take your time and think about it, and think about it and go back to it like it's a painting, right? Ask yourself why for everything, and because I'm gonna ask why for parts of your backstory, because I'm gonna answer that why in a different way, But yeah, I feel like hopping into doing this professionally full time and doing this for work, it's been harder to get into some of those grittier games because I do a lot of one shots, and there's only so much you can go with one shots,
Yeah. This is why I'm like, if I'm gonna run some actual plays, one shots, I think I'm gonna relegate for like the ones that are designed for being best played as one shots, like the Grant Howard one page sort of stuff, so that sort of thing. Like those fun, like there's not a lot of depth to them, so you're gonna get as much, you're gonna mine it for as much as it's got in 3 hours. And if I do actual play D&D, I think I'm gonna be like 3 to 12 episodes, like something that's long enough that you can get like a character arc, beginning, middle, end. You got somewhere to go with it. You've got the hero's journey that you can actually explore, and then
character arcs
short enough that people aren't committed to it for forevermore, and they're like, I can't jump into that. It's been going for 3 years, so I think that's kind of the mini series is the way to go.
That's something I was looking at. I was gonna do one as part of one of my incentives from last year, but I'm looking like literally at all the amount of travel I'm doing, and I think I'm going to shift it to one of my friends and I. I did this thing called the Roleplay Relay. I think I told you about it, right? It was my week long.
It was a week. Of, like you did 12 hours. Yeah. Somebody else jumped in 12 hours. You did 12 hours.
Yeah. I did. So essentially, I GM'd 90 hours in a week.
That's psychotic.
It was. It was psychotic. It was. But at the same time, like looking back on it, it was the biggest amount of it's the biggest amount of training you can get as a game master, right? It led me kind of burnt out creatively for a few weeks after that. I couldn't run games, but I did other things, you know. I caught up on other parts of my life. I felt very enriched in other parts of my life, but it was such a boot camp. A lot of it was improvising and world building on the fly. Well, there was one day where I'm like, okay, so I know sort of my goal in this is to go into basically 12 hours of political intrigue, and I tried to kind of arc the entire day through, we're doing a couple session adventure in the day. And so I sat down for 25 minutes, world built, set my scenario, and with that 25 minutes of work, of prep, because I was not sleeping enough, obviously, because I was always like activated, and you know, the fight or flight part of ADHD, when you're like, you know, I need to come down from this to then do the thing. And then I did 12 hours of political intrigue. I homebrewed probably 20 to 30 stat blocks because I was like, I'm not pulling from the monster manual. It's just not going to be fun. You know, the way I have a lot of opinions about encounter building with the monster manual, the low action economy, having to put too many creatures, combats not feeling very urgent because it's a bit of a hack and slash thing. I got the Kobold Press Tome of Beasts one.
Right.
Beautiful. There was a lot of things I could just pull out of there and have a great time with as is. But essentially, yeah, no, that was awesome. I met some really lovely people. Actually, me and my part of the cast, we all got matching tattoos.
Wow.
It was Jillian's idea. We finally all gathered together for the first time in a while, and she ran up to me and she said, "We're getting matching tattoos," and ran away. And I turned to my friend. I'm like, "Oh, I got voluntold. I'm getting a matching tattoo."
So everybody else has got agency and Comic Sans on their feet as well now, right?
No, not that one. That's just me. And that is
that's
Comic
just
Sans
you
agency
in their
thing.
world.
Yeah, that's
that
just me.
Just you.
Yeah, the C and the Y are basically all faded because my body's rejecting. My body's having its own agency and rejecting the tattoo. The fun thing about being a creator and doing this full time, as a contrast to last year, the tattoo there was like hey, here's this fun thing we'll do as a community, because I do say agency a lot. There's a counter on my stream. But as a creator, it was this imposter syndrome that I will not hit these goals unless I offer crazy things because I'm not enough. And that's something I'm really trying to, in my New Year's resolution, just be like, nah, me doing the work that I do is enough. You know, being an actor and constantly being told, oh yeah, I know you're working hard and you're doing really well. We're not going to pay you more because the budget doesn't do it. If you look at it as an actor, I've been in like five actor shows where it's like, this would not exist without us. It's a minimal set. It's, you know, this would not exist without us. Like, it makes no sense that we're not even being paid a wage that I have to serve 3-4 days a week on top of this to make ends meet. Like, it doesn't make any sense, right? And so that kind of carried on.
I did a sort of, not a thesis per se, because the drama school wasn't, when I went through it, like set up like a university. We didn't have that sort of academic work that we had to do, but it was similar to a thesis where we had to do like a project, and I did it on the importance of the arts and storytelling in a society, and how we don't pay it as if it's valued, but it is one of the most valued jobs in the world, as evidenced by the fact that it's one of the very first jobs in the world, and it's one of the jobs that people go back to in times of great distress. Like anytime that there's a huge flood comes, a tsunami or something destroys towns and stuff. Obviously, like first line workers and stuff, like the first, what do they call them, the police and
first
the
responders.
First responders, that's the word. The first responders obviously incredibly important, but one of the first things that you do after that is people start to need some sort of escapism, or they need stories, or they need they need like religion and stuff, which is just another form of storytelling. And I did this whole sort of project on the importance and the history of storytelling and how important it is to a society, and yet we devalue the arts in so many ways by just not paying it.
Because it's more profitable for shareholders to gaslight performers to be like, you are a cog in the machine, you are this, and convince them that they need this, they need these jobs, and keep their wages low, right? And so they can make a higher profit at the end of the day. It's the system in itself. The idea to me of shareholders is just people are taking profit from something without contributing to the work as it goes. It is hierarchical, and it is often like just this thing that isn't sustainable for the arts. Look at the pandemic, arts workers couldn't work. There was a drought of content. It kind of showed that a little bit. The recent, what's the word? Strikes in the States for their, their was it AFTRA, AFTRA SAG or something? I don't know. I'm not American yet, but it is much easier to abuse people when you gaslight them and tell them essentially, oh yeah, but you're not worth this. This is worth something, right? And the whole system of capitalism works around manufacturing what is seen as good as a job or bad as a job. To me, we can talk about the subjective morality of what is a good job versus a bad job. The things like being a nurse and all that. A job that is also completely gaslit when it comes to how much those people are paid.
Yeah,
it is ridiculous to me. It's not ridiculous. It's just very easy to
A really fun.
Easy. Sorry.
No, you go on. You finish that.
Last thing. Whenever talking to people who, like you mentioned, just people talking about oh no, this is not valuable. We're talking people who say that teachers are just glorified babysitters. I have two ways to approach it. I either break down the system that gives them their opinion, their opinion, tell them why it's bad based on that system. They can choose to ignore that, or like you said, you can use the system's rules to argue and tell them, okay, by the system's rules, bam, 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 bam. So it's always subjective. Their thing is always subjective. It is this is valued this way, this is valued this way, right? But at the end of the day, it's by arbitrary rules. Their subjectivity and what they're clinging to in terms of this is this value, this is this value. Money's all made up. Money is fucking made up.
It's like when somebody's argument for why something's wrong is because it's illegal, and I'm like, that's not no.
Those people.
It's not wrong because it's illegal. It should be illegal because it's wrong.
That's someone who doesn't.
Laws are there around things because it's like, hey, we've decided as a society that this is bad for people and for civilization, and so therefore we make it illegal. And too many of the laws are in place because it always has been, or it's wrong because we're told that it's wrong because it's illegal, and therefore it must be wrong.
But the thing is with that is not those people don't understand sociology. Who writes those laws?
Who writes the laws?
Who are the people who puts the laws forward?
It was once illegal to have there was a guy who did a video that was see how many laws I can break in front of the police in London in a day or something, and he went through all of the really old laws that never actually got abolished or whatever, and so they're still technically illegal, but they're not enforced, and most police officers don't even know them and stuff. And he went round it was illegal to wear a ruff in a library, and it's illegal to have a fish in the open in Parliament or something, or illegal to wear a full suit of armour in the Parliament buildings, and he went round and did all of these these antiquated laws and broke them all, just to kind of as a humorous video, but also as a way of showing that hey, laws, that these were all laws at one point in time. Don't live your life based on this is wrong. Laws can be repealed, laws can be changed.
Can someone post the quote in chat? I don't know about the top of my head. Burnley Mulligan in Fantasy High has this little halfling guy.
Oh yeah, the little anarchist
laws
halfling.
Are rules made by the dominant socioeconomic like group in any given nation, and they're basically and the police is just an occupying army, and those laws are just basically a threat of violence. You know, it is true, and that's what it is, right? The fact that stealing is such a thing, right? But anyways, I can talk about that for days and days and days, right? Obviously, it is part of world building. Well, it's about history, sociology, the social sciences, you know. And when you kind of take that and kick it out of the window, it's why I think economics to me is a funny like addition to the social sciences, because it is made up. You know, it is like a lot of the rules are you have a science that is based off of a system, and often is like it's propaganda to a certain extent, right? In the way that I've had it be taught to me in high school. Looking back, and I'm like, oh yeah, but none of that was real. None of that was true. Being proven over decades of just, you know, anyway. Yeah.
Max Fosh, thank you. Someone in the chat said the video is called "I Broke Silly Laws in Front of the Police." There you go. Cool. I was going to say earlier when we were talking about like the importance of jobs and how society values them and stuff, a fun conversation starter I've found that I quite like asking people is like, if what you do for a living disappeared, like nobody did it anymore as of like today, everybody just click your finger, nobody does that job, how much impact would it have on society in the short term and in the long term? Because I think like what we do as storytellers, or if you want to go really niche and just say like D&D content creators, like you click it and it has zero impact on society. But several years down the line, still people aren't storytelling, or still people aren't making this sort of content, and suddenly people start to realize it, kind of thing. Whereas certain people, it's like the nurses are devalued. You click your fingers and there's no nurses anymore. How much impact does it have on society? Society breaks down. Like this, like immediately, like people are dying of very curable and whatever. So it's really interesting that
need for escapism. Yeah, no, you're right. We are one need for escapism and storytelling and blah blah blah. That'll happen. You know, books. Books was reading books, telling stories around the fire, whatever. There's going to be something for that, or there's going to be a gaping hole in society, right? It's like how community is super important. You know, there's a reason why if I look at your chat here, I see a lot of names that I see often. Community is very important, right? We live in a society in a time economically that a lot of our third spaces are disappearing. Third spaces are not your home, not your work, places to be in a community, right? And so it's
which is one of the
a lot of
major
studies
things
on
that
it.
Religion, one of the major things that religion gives to people, and that one of the reasons that people argue religion is still important for society. And I'm like, well, it's important in that we don't have like atheist churches. We don't have a place that you can go to gather with other people who are like-minded, to just like be with them as a community. The sense of community that people get from religion is one of the biggest
That's why churches are fucking manipulative, because you're taking a basic human
you're taking
need,
the need for community, and saying you can only get this.
It's interesting. It's all
you and I could talk a lot about the rise of religion in history.
Listen,
I'm sure.
Yeah, we can circle jerk for hours, Rob. We very much can.
But I like this echo chamber. Let's just you and I talk about it forever.
An echo chamber's fine if you're describing and you're good at saying, you know, if you're not regurgitating ideas, but you were breaking them down and coming up with things on the spot. Yeah. You know?
Let's move into sort of present day for you. Where are we at the moment, and what are you working on? What's the recent history to recent future of ThePlayMatt as a business?
So we're going to talk specifically about just since January 1st, because I've been working literally every single day. I think yesterday afternoon I hit a point. I worked in the morning. I did just some GM prep for the weekend. And then I had a lovely conversation and got to catch up with our good friend Dag, Dead Aussie Gamer.
Oh, yeah, nice.
We just hopped in a video chat and looked at some homebrew stuff together. It was a fun time.
Nice.
And then after I was like, I'm so tired. I need to take it easy today, knowing that my weekend was going to be like, today my day is I went to the gym, which is my brother's basement, because we're saving money on gym memberships. He's got a great setup there. So I did that, came home, ate, showered, did some more GM prep stuff, decided an hour before this, I'm going to take it easy, played around a Hades, because I need to take breaks, apparently. I get yelled at if I don't. Took a 10-minute nap, because that's the kind of type of naps I take. Then I was ready for this. I'm doing this, and then tonight I'm streaming a horror video game that was an incentive from something last month.
If we meet this goal, I'll play this game.
Yep.
Nice.
So if you want to come see me
Do you
squeal,
do well with horror games or no?
no.
Is this
I am a
because it's
game
like,
master
okay.
who is used. I'm a game master Dom who's used to being in control.
Gotcha.
Put me in
Yeah.
that situation where I have no agency.
100%.
Right?
Yeah. Yeah, I've talked about this a lot on my stream. Another similarity between us, saying like I don't do well with horror. Like I've never enjoyed horror films and stuff growing up, and I just thought I didn't like the horror genre. I was like, nah, horror's just never for me. Until I started listening to like some horror podcasts, and I was like, oh, this is some really good storytelling. Like it's really well done. And then I started doing horror specials for like Halloween and things, and I was like, oh, I really enjoy telling horror stories because then I'm in charge, then I'm in control, then I know what the twists are. Yeah.
I find horror films usually are too corny and the writing's usually not great, so it doesn't do anything to me. The games, I'm in there, I'm screwed. I'm so screwed. But yeah, a lot of it has been, I've had just a lot of very generous community members. I ran 2 one-shots last weekend, and I do the thing with the redeems where people can help support the channel and influence the game, and those were good. I had a few bookings.
About the influence in the game stuff. Do you do like for a certain donation you can do X, for a certain donation you can do Y kind of thing? Like is it like for $5 you can give advantage to a player, that sort of thing?
I started switching it up to being mostly just positive for the players,
right.
So they have a good time, because like a lot of it, these are my friends who want to succeed and like want me to succeed, and like we're happy, because essentially like if I was doing an in-studio actual play, which I want to do very soon, I'm paying people to be there. It's a different kind of thing, and so it's something I want to steer away from in the future. I want to make sure that everybody's, but it's also people that I invite knowing like, hey, I'm there for you whenever you need me and stuff, and so that kind of thing. And often it's kind of fun for them because they get fun boons, and it gets a little wild and chaotic too, but never in a way that's like super game breaking.
That was kind of my question. Like, what have you decided is the balance there of like how to give people certain fun boons that aren't game breaking?
Takes time. I started making things a little bit just on the higher end expensive, because I don't want to bog down the game too much for my players too. I want to make sure I can get them in and out in 3.5 to 4, sometimes 4.25, 4.5 hours if the combat gets really intense. You got a big healer in the group. It's hard to tell all the time. But a lot of it is like things that are fun. Advantage is people love advantage, or like a boost on a roll if they're like, I really want to have this moment happen, or I really want this piece of knowledge or something. Magic items are something that players really, really enjoy, because it adds a layer of customizability that they rarely have control over when, or rarely get to like, oh, I have a thing now, when they choose their classes, right? And it can add something fun to that. I also do things like a health potion, if the fight's intense. The audience is like, I don't want them to die, and they want to have agency too. So a lot of the fun is like the audience gets to have agency if they so choose. There's also channel point redemptions, where people who spend a lot of time in my streams, especially like my world building and talk streams, they'll have many channel points saved because I don't use it too much. They can kind of use this to like help the players, and so it's not just like a pay type thing, right?
Because I've been thinking like about that a lot with regards to actual plays on Twitch, and it's like, if you're going to be doing it live, what is the benefit of doing it live over doing it on YouTube? Like, if you did it on YouTube, you could pre-record it, you can edit it, you can produce it, you can have better lighting, sound effects, you can have subtitles, you can do all sorts of stuff with a produced one. So if you're going to choose to ignore all of that stuff in favor of doing it live on Twitch, why are you doing that? And I always thought, like, when I first started streaming, I was like, I don't want to do an actual play where I'm just ignoring the audience for the entire time. Which is where the idea for Twitch Tales came through, where I was like, I'm just gonna have no players at all, and just like go 100% down that scale, and be like right down the other end where the audience are the players, and so like if I'm doing actual plays, sometimes my one shots are just like, sorry guys, you're gonna just be watching this for the next 3 hours because I don't want your input into this particular one shot. I'm focused on the players, but I am sort of thinking a lot more about what is the balance between giving the audience sort of, and I think it's a control thing maybe. Like for me, I'm like, if I'm giving the audience the ability to give out hero points and rerolls and advantages and stuff, that's kind of my purview as the dungeon master to do that, and I'm giving that control over to the audience to be like, no, you're deciding that you can heal them in this moment, which can change the balance of a fight that I wasn't prepared for, because I'm usually the one in control of all of the things that can balance a fight. It's difficult.
I think the fun thing with that is it is difficult. It's something that I've kind of developed a little bit over time, and there's a trade-off as a content creator where chances are I'm not going to end up putting the thing on like something like YouTube or something, right? It is something that I'm doing. It's existing there. It's existing for my players. It's also existing as a way to help fund me and do this, right? I am doing this all extremely full time at this point, right? But something that is where my math background and like something that I feel very comfortable as a GM is homebrew. And like creating creatures and creating strong creatures going in, it's like the fight's going to be tough. Chances are in a one shot, you want something cathartic, you want something intense, right?
Yeah.
You don't want to get to a fight and it's like, oh, and I want it to be fast. I want a fight to theoretically, if they're level 10 characters and it's a boss fight, an hour. How do you do that? More damage, move quicker, you know?
Yeah.
More damage, more action economy, move quicker. You know, everybody's boss HP not crazy high, but depending, right? Multiple phases, multiple kind of things, and so rarely has chat kind of broken the thing. If anything, they helped. And some games, if there's less influence, the fight's even harder. I had a game where I had Cinderblock Sally down to 4 HP, everyone else was down. And Cinder won and killed the thing. Nice. And I wasn't fucking editing HP on that creature. I was like, no, this is gonna be fun. I got token art made for this creature. We're gonna have a good time, you know, like, and it was cathartic. It was lovely. It was fun, you know. And there's some games where it's like, okay, this is gonna be hard. This is gonna be really hard if there's no donos. I don't care. I'm not making the thing based on the dono. I'm saying it's about how you do the storytelling, right? I adapt the storytelling. You guys fought a Nightmare Oni, and it was rough, and there was not a lot on that one. And I was like, you know what? Doesn't matter. You'll get there. Maybe we'll see. Maybe right?
We'll see.
Yeah.
Especially with one shots, you can be like, if it ends in a TPK, it ends. That's how this story was told. Some stories end in tragedy.
Usually they don't end in a TPK. They end in a way that's like, damn, that was hard. It's satisfying. Done. Cool.
Yeah.
You know, we're all spent.
I had the thought to be like, let's refresh myself of the sort of stuff that Matt does last night before this chat. And so I went onto your YouTube channel. I was like, I don't think I've ever been on his YouTube channel. What does he do over there? What does he put over there? And
not much yet.
Not a lot, but I was one of the videos that is there is the Oops All Hags game, and I was like, oh man, I've got to watch this again. And so I started watching it, just being like, I'll just like refresh my memory as to how it kind of went. I ended up watching the whole thing till like 3 a.m.
Really?
Yeah, I watched the whole thing. It was such a good, it was such a well-run thing, one shot. If you guys haven't seen it, go over to the ThePlayMatt's YouTube, and it's just called Oops All Hags with me, DM Dave, and AJ Winters. And it was November 2022, I think, so it's a while back. And it was, and what I'd forgotten when I started watching it was like at one point I said, I've only just met you and I'm gonna demonetize your channel. I'm gonna get you cancelled. I was like, oh yeah, I'd literally just met you. Like you had somebody pull out of that game. It was gonna be initially all femmes, right? And then
no.
You say in the episode it was you wanted it to be all femmes.
I cast AJ and I was like, I'm having a real hard time casting people right now, and I wanted really strong performers. I wanted like good performers, and so Dave, I was like, you know what, Dave would be so funny as maybe the one guy in the group.
The one guy in all Dave. Yeah.
And then AJ was like, hey, I don't know if you know Rob Hartley, and I've seen your stuff before, obviously, right? I was like, oh, cool, like sick. I'm like, yeah, no, absolutely, no, you do. You have a huge platform. Obviously, I saw who you were, right? I'm a quiet guy in the background. And I was like, oh, sick. I was like, oh, I can make this really good then. If I got like 3 strong performers that are all GMs, I'm like, sweet. And when I play with mostly GMs, it's so easy. It's so easy because it's like we're all kind of, and I'm just kind of the pillar to bounce things off people, you know?
It was so good. It was so good, and meeting you then was like a great. Let's give this a test. See if this guy's someone who's worth my time in the future, kind of thing. Like and you immediately just like picked up the ball and was like, oh wow, this guy's world is strong. Your improv was really shines through. Like at one point. I like in the very early stages of the game, which doesn't even start until like 20 minutes into the video because of all of the rambling and the bullshit and completely Dave and I especially just like going. And
I think I put a little tag where people can click and skip that
and just
part.
Jump to it, But it starts 18 minutes in, and then and you're just like describing the characters. All right, describe what we're seeing. What does your character look like? What does your character look like? And for me, I was just like, oh, I want to set up that I've got like a vial of blood, which is a component for one of the spells that I have, so maybe I'll cast it in future. Maybe I don't even get to it, but like I want to make sure I've got the vial for it. And so I just improvise this. We skip to I'm walking down the path and there's a guy with me who's a big jock, and you just without a hesitation you were like, I'm the jock, and like you were just like you weren't like, oh, Rob's trying to do a GM thing and he's a player, so I don't know what to do here. You were like, yeah, I've handed the ball over to Rob. Rob's GMing this scene for a second because he thinks it's important for whatever reason. I'll be his NPC for him. I'll just go with him, like yes and him and stuff, and then like we jump back to the scene and I was like, right, I've got his blood. Let's continue on with the show. Something will always kind of flop on my face at some point, but there's something that I basically give up, not control to a certain sense, where it's like I don't want to set up a tight scenario where I'm kind of pacing things in a certain way and it's going to go a certain way. I have to give up that to be like, cool, I know what the vibe is, I know what's happening, I know what the plot is, I know what's happening in the town, all the things you saw with the halflings with guns, is making fun of kids with guns because it's funny and dark, Halloween, and I think there's something about how it's like, oh, you're doing this now, cool, I'm there with you, and you find a way through listening, and the more that I get things from players and performers, the more fodder I get. It's a lot easier for me to get fodder at a table over a campaign than to sit down and be like, all these one-shots I produce, I'm coming up with the concept, picking a place in my world as the only sort of source of inspiration. In any writing, you need an emotional response, creative, like I'm taking some other art forms in, whether it's music, visuals, or something to get you inspired, stories, real-world events or something, and then you start forming a story, you start forming it into something concrete. But when you're producing a lot of that, in November, I think I did like 7 one-shots. Jeez. From scratch, I burnt out. It was too much. Early in December, I was like, yeah, I got nothing. You have to find ways to keep being inspired, and the players at the table are always going to be your best source of inspiration, right? And sometimes it's you come with a group that like they meld really well, or they come heavy concept. When we did the Nightmare one shot in that part of my world, you mentioned something about being younger. You said something about your inner child, and I was like, cool, I'm going to use your inner child to fuck you up. Is what I told myself, right? I'm going to use your character's inner child. They're going to have to literally face. How do I make a one-shot emotionally cathartic? Cool, you're going to face your inner child in this game. Listening is so important. It's that stuff that I instantly went, oh, I'm gonna like this guy. Like this guy's gonna stick around. I'm gonna keep him around. We're gonna do the whole like raiding into each other. We're gonna make sure that like he's part of this community. I want him in my horizon, because your talents, your skills and talents shone through in that first game. And it's just crazy to jump into something like that when you're just like, I don't know this guy. I don't know this guy, but someone who I know and trust has vouched for him, so therefore, I'll give him a go, and we'll go play a game with him.
I met AJ through, we were both invited on a one shot, and AJ was like playing, I'm going to play a very straight dad. I was like, cool, I'm going to play a super gay, like just pansexual, like thing, which is kind of me. And I was like, cool, I'm gonna make that dad want to fuck whatever this is. And so that's how we, and so when you came on and your character was flirting with AJ, I was like, sick, let's go. I gave you, listen, if you need any, Jad, if you need any advertisement towards going watch the Oops All Hag game, there's a moment where I say these explicit words. Oh, sure, I'll give you advantage because you're tongue fucking AJ's character. Sure. Sorry, AJ's character's
tongue
ear,
fucking his
specifically.
Ear.
Specifically, which part?
Tongue fucking his ear. It's like, there's one point I say something to Dave, because I'm like, he says something and then I respond with, do you ever just think those words have probably never been said in that order before? Because it's something about my hag walrus drops out of the sky and crushes the shadow being into blah, 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 while I talk about mud flapping or something. And I was like, I don't think that sentence has ever been said.
That moment, like, I was like, Dave was off camera for a while. I'm like, oh no, he must have the runs or something, and then just comes back in. Go see it. It was a lot of fun.
It's so good. Go watch it. It's very fun.
So here's a question for you. Robert Hartley, GM. When am I going to be in a game that you run? Because I've only ever GM'd for you.
Yeah, it's been on, huh? It's coming. I this year there's more focus on me doing one shots and three shots and things. Like I've been chatting with Fancy about this and stuff as well. Like the direction that my channel's going. A lot of my I don't tend to run stuff on my channel all that often. Like I've run a couple of Grant Howitt one shots. I've run a lot of things for Twitch Tales and stuff. But I most of my streams are short rest interviews, behind the scenes watch parties of the Viva La Dirt League stuff. Occasionally I like downtime video gaming things, some world building stuff. It's very rare that I actually run actual plays, and it's one of the things that we've been
production, right?
It's one of the things that Fancy and I've particularly been talking about. Like, hey, we should do that more, because then people get to see outside of Viva La Dirt League. Like, hey, this is what this guy does. This is how he can run. So this year there will be more, and you are on the list of people that I want to have on. What sort of game would you be interested in joining me for? Like a D&D mini campaign, or like a one shot, one page wacky something?
Mini campaign. If we can organize the schedule in time, I'd have to see like what my next months are. I am traveling a lot, but I'd be super down for a mini campaign. I like diving into characters. I got to be in my first mini campaign in a while on GM Workshop's channel.
Nice.
And that was super fun. So I met like Cinderblock Sally and Scarlet.
Was it the one where you were all like relatively high level? It was like level 12s or something, and you were
10 and then 14.
Zach was playing a paper origami character or something for that one.
Yes, Crane. Bird names, right? Nice. Zach's name in my Foundry is Zach Bird Guy, and I had Zach on my channel last week, and I finally got to GM a Zach Bird character, so that was nice. Nice. But I one shot for sure, because it's super easy to be like, yes, I can commit to one day. Here's the thing, but let me know what you have in terms of like short series. I'm happy to learn a system. I'm happy to be a player in D&D. I mostly just GM.
Like, I'm looking back on it now and going, like, I think most of the things that I have actual played on my channel have been for specific reasons. Like the fundraiser that I did, that was like one of the stretch goals was like, oh, I'll learn Pathfinder, and I put it at like a really obscene level, because I was like, I don't want to learn Pathfinder, and people just met it and smashed it, and I was like, I guess I'm running a 3-shot Pathfinder for Dag then, because it was that running joke. Yeah,
if you permit me to self-advertise, which I feel like a lot of this is
this kind of the point of short rest.
So I have a monthly Ko-fi goal, and if I hit it, I add stretch goals. We're 83%, and I've gotten a couple things along the way. But if I hit 100, one of them is I'm making a Death Knight class for 5th/5.5 edition. I looked at making a subclass, and all the class, like the core class mechanics of, say, the fighter, the warlock, the paladin, just got in the way. And so I'm just going to make a class from scratch, and we're doing it in a very slow pace, where we're answering the question, why does this need to exist? I ask that about every class. That's why when someone's like, hey, have you seen the Mystic class? I'm like, no, that doesn't need to exist. There's no core class fantasy or strong written interpretation of what this is, other than, I don't know, man, we kind of want psychic spells or psychic stuff, right? So the telekinesis spell in a class. So started working on that on Wednesday. It was a lot of fun. But 100% I will learn the system and run a one-shot on stream. A lot of creators are really excited, because apparently everyone wants to play this. Vampire the Masquerade is something I'm really interested in. I love vampires because, to me, as a creature, they are monstrous and powerful, but they also have the depth of being of humanity to a certain extent, right? You can take some of the nature parts and twist them, their lust, their greed and stuff.
Yeah.
But it's still relatable and interesting as an antagonist. Yeah.
I
love that's the thing.
I'm a big fan of vampires and hags as monsters that you can really do something twisty with. Of like, this is close enough for you to see, like, because it's that uncanny valley sort of thing of like an ooze or something is like, it's just a horrific, it's gonna consume me, but it's far enough away from anything to be like, that's a different thing. That's just a monster. And vampires and hags, and certain other ones as well, they lie in that this is close enough. This is they act Devils and they talk like normal, and you can have like a conversation with them, and you can be like, man, they're close to humanity, but there's something twisted or monstrous about them.
I had this ongoing joke with one of my players in like different games, where I'm gonna hat trick them, which means I've gotten them to sleep with a hag twice over 2 different characters. And I said, one day we're gonna be like in our late 60s, early 70s. I'm like, hey, I want to play a game of Dungeons and Dragons. Oh, it's been so long. And then by the end of it, they'll have fucked a hag. Which was the Oops All Hag was fun because I got to sit back and watch the hags
fuck each other.
Yeah, exactly. So
I have a similar sort of running joke. It hasn't happened in a long time actually, probably because I haven't played on one of Dread's games. But I kiss liches a lot apparently. Like it's happened. If I had a nickel for every time if I had a nickel for every time I kissed a lich, I'd have 2 nickels, which isn't a lot, but it's weird that it's happened twice.
I mean, good for you. I mean, you must love teeth.
Gotta go for my. The thing is, a lot of it's like the enchantment kind of shit of like you see them as this beautiful woman and you're making out with them, and everybody else is like you're seeing him making out with this decrepit kind of corpsey looking. I don't even remember the story of why I ended up making out with most of these liches, but it's definitely happened twice.
Listen.
Anyway, we're running out of time, and I want to give time for like the chat to actually ask questions. If you guys have questions for me or for Matt, you can redeem your channel points just underneath where it says send a message in the chat box. You can see little copper pieces, a little stack of copper pieces. You're earning those passively just by being here watching. Even if this is the first stream you've seen, you've probably got at least 50 by now, so you can redeem those for asking a question. It goes into the redemptions list. That's why I'll be able to actually see all of the questions, even if I've missed them at the time that they got asked. So redeem your questions for us about anything, not even necessarily D&D. If you just want to ask about other things, that's fine.
Do you want me to just scroll up, find some, and answer them? Or
no, it's fine. We'll get to them. That's the point of redeeming them, that I can get to them. But while we're waiting for those to come in, I want to talk about the future of the playmat. What is A, on the near horizon, what is coming soon, and B, what is in the blue sky distant future of like where you want to be eventually. Like what's your ultimate goal?
Oh my. So right now it's just trying to get my bearings, trying to get enough clients for things. I really enjoy doing the coachings because it's like, it's one-on-one, it's neat. I can kind of schedule them around, garnering. So I've been trying to stream more and just, so many thoughts at once. Near right now, it's running through some of the games that were purchased last month. I've got one tomorrow. I'm doing a game tomorrow. Then I'm doing the interview with AJ at night. Sunday is my first start playing .games one, and the reason I booked on there is so it's easier for people to be like, I don't have the capacity to organize other folk. I just want to book on something. Gotcha. And that's something actually I would love to shout out to the audience here, because I still need about 2 players to run the game that I'm booking, and you can find me at startplaying.games /game ThePlayMatt. I have a one-shot. It's a level 20 one-shot about through hell, a fight with a mischievous archdevil, and for a lot of people who never really get the chance to play at level 20, I homebrewed a really, really cool stat block there, and I think it's going to be a fun, intense fight. Go crazy,
I can guarantee,
build your worst.
2 of your games, like I can vouch for the fact that the game, the combat there with level 20 characters will feel very intense but very dynamic. It won't one of the things that I appreciate about you is that it never feels like a hit point slug. Like it's gonna be, there's gonna be phases and dynamism in the fight, and there's gonna be like stakes that change throughout and stuff. So yeah,
it's important.
If you wanna hire Matt and see for yourself how he plays, you've got a couple of slots left open for that. You're gonna have to let me know
questions,
how
DM
it all goes. The stat playing.
I will.
I had Devon on here a little while back chatting with him.
Nice.
And I'm going to be meeting up with him in San Francisco in later this year, in March.
Sweet. Yeah.
So I'm going to meet up with him, and he's going to show me the stat playing studios and stuff.
Oh, that's cool. That's cool. It's such a cool website. It's one of those things where as a business, I'm like, okay, they take a cut. They take not a bad cut. It's really not a bad cut. And it's a really, really lovely website. And so I'm like, I want to like do it occasionally type thing. Like I can't run campaigns all the time.
Yeah.
But I think it's nice for the players, like I said, who can't just book my whole time or organize. Hey, I need 4 players to kind of split the price. A lot of my bookings are usually paid by one person. They just go, I'm buying the thing for friends, or it's a gift for someone as well. And I've got to charge what helps me make a living. That's worth my time. On top of everything. Look at that
stuff. And you've got to take into account not only the 4 hours that you're playing, but the prep time as well and stuff like that.
And the experience that I have, right? The skill and the experience and.
That's one of the hardest things as a professional dungeon master. That's one of the things that I struggled with for a while. Of like, what the hell do I price it at? Like, what do I give? How do I set my prices? And unfortunately, a lot of it was just like, worth is only what somebody's going to be willing to pay for it. Like, there's nothing inherently worthy of the Mona Lisa. It's a good painting, but it's only priceless because of everything around it. Like, a Ferrari is not necessarily exceptional, but like it is because people are willing to say that it is. It's the same with your time. Like, if somebody's willing to pay it, then that's what it's worth. Ultimately.
No, I agree. And I think that's why, so the main thing for me is like, my goal in the future is to find a wider audience, and I know short form content's the way to do that. This platform, Twitch, doesn't really promote much growth, No. And so I want to be able to find a wider audience, to find the people that are like-minded, who are like, they will pay the worth. And also I want to make a Patreon at some point. I'm still trying to figure out how to do that as a professional game master, that I can offer things that I think are not things that I'm going to burn out on. That's a theme with me, and constantly trying to actually
a couple of
do the thing that's my worth. Like,
I'm gonna do a Patreon and I'm gonna offer this every month. I'm like, you're not gonna do that every month. That's too much time.
Finding a way to do a lot of that passive income so I can take a little stress off of that, of like just community support and making sure that people, I want to do that. I also want to start producing.
The only way to do this is to have like 100 different sources of revenue, especially because if any one of your sources is more reliant on the other, like say your majority of my income comes from YouTube, and then YouTube suddenly starts demonetizing your videos with no reason, which has happened to a lot of people that I know. It's like, they didn't like this thing. A couple of my videos have just been like demonetized, and it's like, why? It's public. Like, one of my I did a Robert Reed's of Charles Dickens' A Christmas Carol for Christmas, and one of the staves, Jacob's Mal, the first stave, because it's public domain. Which is why I only ever choose public domain stories for my Robert Reed's, which is why I started with like Oscar Wilde and stuff. But like, it was public domain story, perfectly fine to read it. But the first stave, Jacob's Mally's Ghost, it got demonetized and or limited availability on ads or something, and we challenged it, and we just got like, it's been put this way from a computer algorithm. You can request to have it reviewed by a human if you want. And we did it. We like requested it, and then a human apparently reviewed it and went, that's still demonetized. It's like,
that's so weird.
It's a Christmas Carol. It's been redone like a million different ways, by a million different people. What the hell's wrong with it? It doesn't swear in it. There's no like death in it. I think we all that Fancy and I can assume is that the very first line of A Christmas Carol is Jacob Marley was dead. That's all there is to it. He was definitely dead, and blah blah blah. And if you don't realize that he's dead, then the rest of this story makes no sense. Blah blah blah. And he goes on in the first paragraph about how Jacob Marley's definitely dead before he comes back as a ghost. And we think, is that it? Are people so sensitive that they can't even hear the word death in a Christmas Carol? In a title?
It's all over Pixar movies.
Exactly. I don't know. So we don't know why, but like, my whole point is, YouTube can sometimes be fickle. Any of these platforms can be really fickle, and that's literally our living. And it's like it's like if you're reliant on your YouTube income or your Twitch income or whatever, and suddenly they're like, you're going to be banned for whatever, and even if you haven't done anything wrong, and they like review it and decide later, actually we were wrong to demonetize you. They don't repay you for the amount of lost income. It's like your boss you've done all the work, and then it comes to payday, and your boss is like, nah. And you're like, what do you mean, nah? And you're like, I don't think you can have it this week. And you like challenge it. They go through the whole HR process, and they go, oh no, I was wrong. You do deserve it, but I'm not going to pay you it.
Yeah,
that's the income that we live on as creators, and so it's important for us to be like, I get some from my merch, I get some from Twitch, I get some from YouTube, I get some from Patreon, I get some from my in-person games.
Yeah, that's the goal. I mean, most of my income comes from Ko-fi. Making the switch from bits and subs to Ko-fi is how I was able to start paying my bills, because I'm not forking over half of my very generous donations to a platform that doesn't really do anything for my own growth, right? And like doing that has helped a lot. But I want to go to do something more sustainable, which means I have to find out, I have to fight the biggest BBG of all time, which is short form algorithms, because or find jobs and stuff with bigger creators, and just get folks to look at this mug for a while.
Yeah.
Is the thing. Yeah.
Oh, you get to
it's
SWer. What's a SWer? OnlyFans.
Sex worker.
Sex worker. Gotcha. Sex worker. OnlyFans friendly takes 20% of everything you make, and Twitch takes half. Yeah.
It'd be rough, But that's why, once again, community support and the things that y'all do as a community, it is paramount. You are many producers. You are just good faith producers. You're everything that is good about that part of things. And so, even the folks that they can't spare the buck and are just spending time there, like little things like I'm trying to get my viewership higher. So I am seen as more, and your social currency is very important in those things as well, right? And it's this thing where, like, I know I'm a creator that, and I feel like you would agree, just because we understand each other. My social currency is a lot lower than my skill level, and this is not to be conceited. This is something that I've had to literally build the confidence to say over years.
It's one of the things that takes a while, doesn't it? To be like, it's not arrogant to acknowledge your worth. And you are a very talented and skilled dungeon master and content creator, and to say that isn't arrogant. But it still feels that way because we've been taught that it's not okay to like up yourself.
Yes, and it's something I got to start saying if I'm going to be doing this full time. Yeah. But to an extent where it's like I have to give credit where credit's due and understand that it's not all me. I wouldn't be here without like my community members, man. I would not be in this seat doing this today if it wasn't for this super lovely support that people have. And you know what? If you want to come play a game with me, man, it's there. Come check it out. I'm very happy to run games when I can, and like putting them up there and stuff, and people hiring me. It makes me happy. 100%.
All right. Well, let's jump into some questions from the audience, shall we? Because we've gotten a few coming through. So 2 hours ago, Centauri asked us, either from the DM or player perspective, what is the D&D class that you've disliked the most and why?
Ooh,
from a DM perspective, for me it would be Paladin, because they feel like every I think one of the very clever balance ways that they do in D&D 5e is to make every class feel overpowered. You can look at any power if they're in their wheelhouse and they're doing the thing that they're meant for, then they can be like, holy shit, dude, rogues, am I right? Or bards, am I right? Or paladins, am I right?
It's the hero aspect, right? Yeah.
But paladins, more than any other, feel like they have even more of those moments than others, and it's hard to sometimes put any sort of it's hard to put a sense of danger in a party with a paladin in it, a high level paladin especially, because of their aura that gives everybody their charisma. Like if you've got a maxed out 20 charisma paladin, which isn't that hard to do, suddenly you're adding 5 to every one of your own saving throws and every one of the saving throws of anyone within 10 feet of you, and that feature alone is like, oh man, that's pretty tough. Then add that on to the fact that they get lay on hands, which is just like action healing, and they don't even need spell slots for it, and bam, they can just lay on hands like 50 hit points in a single action, and then they've got all of their smite, which they get absolutely buffed up if they're hitting like an undead or a fiend or whatever. So paladins, I'd say I can dislike them if I'm not ready for them, if I haven't balanced the encounter to account for the fact that there is one in the party.
I think, and the true playmat experience is answering a question by asking a question. It's what is the source problem there, right? Is it the paladin itself is just too much of too strong a damage dealer in terms of like burst damage out first, right? What kind of game are they in? If they're in a one shot, they're going to be smiting on every attack, and that's something that the next edition I think they're trying to like nerf back on. Because if you put them in a long day type thing, they can space it out a little more. It depends on the class and stuff too, and the other classes in the game. And one of the other problems is the monster manual, and the creatures there are underwhelming of sorts, right? They're not posing enough of a challenge. You wanna make a paladin quake in their boots, do as much damage to them as they're dealing out. You know, make them lose. They're up there doing the thing. Big. Make them lose over half their HP. by the time your turn comes around.
Which I once did to a paladin when I critted him with a Dreadnought's charge ability. You know, the fire Dreadnoughts with the big flaming shields that do some insane amount of d6 fire damage, plus an insane amount of d6 piercing damage because it's a spiked shield, plus an insane amount of d6 bludgeoning damage because it's shield smashing. And they've got a feature where they just they charge through you with a dash, and any creature in their way takes all of this amount of blah blah blah.
Yep.
And if they are prone, it is doubled that amount of damage or something like that because they're being like smeared across the pavement. And then I also crit with the attack, so all of that was. And in my games, you max out the damage that you could have rolled, and then you roll on top of it again. And I took him down from, and he was like a level 10, I think, at the time. So he had a lot of hit points, and his armor class was something like 23, just like standard, because he'd put everything into his armor. And yet I hit him with a crit, and he was just like, this is a new experience. Like, he's not used to being hit at all. And yet when he gets hit, he gets smeared from full to zero in a single strike.
It's a crit.
It was fantastic.
Right?
I think feel critical.
So for me as a DM, I never go like, oh, this one class is something that I'm like, dealing with this class and this mechanic. It's usually when I find a class is underpowered, or a class can only do one thing, right? Like I'm like, or like often it's just the design. You know, what subclass do they choose? Do I find it underwhelming?
Yeah.
A lot of the 2014, 2015 releases, you know, if you put I don't know, a Storm Sorcerer next to a Aberrant Mind Sorcerer,
right?
Yeah, they're different.
Yeah,
you know, the power like creep to sell books, right?
Yeah, some of the rogue subclasses more recently versus the thief. You're like, oh, okay.
As a player, my least favorite class in D&D 5e is the rogue. Because they essentially do, especially in a campaign, they can essentially do the same thing over and over again. You just add a dice every 2 levels, and the rest, a lot of what they get is passive. And so the active part of, you know, being a rogue and being able to do these sneaky things, it's very dependent on what game you're in, what kind of DM you have, you know, things like that. And so for me, it's the thief rogue,
with the ranger. Like, a lot of people badmouth the ranger for the reasons of like the stuff that they get is heavily dependent on the DM. And that's not a well written class if it's dependent on the type of game that you're in. Like, if the DM hand waves the exploration pillar of D&D, combat, exploration, and social, if the DM's hand waving the exploration and is not making you make checks for exhaustion, or making you make checks to not get lost on your way to your next village or whatever, then all of the ranger's features where it's like, hey, you don't have to worry about getting lost, and you can track, and you can find food, all these things that you're doing anyway because the DM's not making it a thing.
I think the biggest, and I think this comes into most classes, and I think it's going to come into a question that I saw that popped up. One of the biggest issues I find with Dungeons and Dragons in the way they release things, whether it's creatures, class mechanics, and like class like aesthetic, like class fantasy things, is oftentimes they'll port something from an older edition that's a different style of play without questioning why. The Paladin's my favorite example, not because of what they do mechanically. That stuff's kind of fun. It's you are basing their power on an oath because you want to be like, oh, but it's not, they don't get it from a god. Then why do they have cleric spells? Okay, then why are they adding divine light damage? And to me, I guess because the idea of clerics and paladins has this Western Judeo-Christian light sort of aesthetic behind it that they're not justifying, you know, and there's no justifying, let's say, in a lot of the 5e mechanics with proper lore. There's no settings books. A lot of the settings books that they're releasing are just revamps of other things, and so they're not asking a lot of the questions. You know, why is Fireball more powerful than other spells at that level? Why are fire spells overtuned? Literally, one of the games designers / mechanics directors of D&D said Fireball's more powerful because it's always been that way, and people have learned to expect it. So you are handicapping a system by being like, oh, it's kind of like, you know, players used to play it, and it's kind of like that.
Yeah.
But it's like those players who played that game were smart enough to know that, well, it doesn't fit in this anymore, right?
Yeah.
It's not the same kind of game anymore. Yeah. And so they're having a hard time with the why. My biggest peeve in creature stat blocks is the rock action. You throw a rock. Giants, why do they have only 2 abilities?
Oh my! Like, Giants are probably the biggest examek of the biggest disappointment in the monster manual, in my opinion. Giants have such incredible history and incredible lore and incredible like thematic usage, and you're like, oh, excellent! I want an entire campaign all about based around giants and stuff, and then you get to the giant stat block, and it's like they've got a sword attack that does some fire damage, and they've got a rock that does some fire damage.
when the
And they're immune to fire.
There's a few reasons why I didn't want to get the Giants book, but mainly because I loved a lot of like the giant stuff coming from like Old Norse mythology and stuff, and so I did a lot of homebrewing myself. Some of the Promethean sort of like being titans that shaped my world were based on the giants, and so I wrote a lot of stuff for that. I wrote a lot of like artifacts for that, a lot of lore, a lot of what their societies were like, you know, a lot of what their old wars were like, you know, with incursions from demons, blah 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 blah. And so that book comes out, I'm like, no, I've been homebrewing this stuff for years. I ain't about to pay to have someone else's stat blocks. Right. You know, the monsters of the multiverse, they released the same action economy on all the creatures and just basically released errata. And I was like, okay, you know, I just got so used to doing the work myself, and it's work that I kind of enjoy, you know, and I can storytell and be unique with it, where it's like they use this ability, this is how it works, and people are like, oh, what is that, you know? It's fun.
I'm with you on that. Like, I make up the stat blocks for pretty much everything I use. I might look at the stat block they give me and go, meh. Like when Wizards of the Coast wanted us to do the promotional material for Wild Beyond the Witchlight with the Viva guys, they wanted me to include the 3 hag sisters, the hag coven, past, present, and future hags, but they didn't have the stat blocks for them yet, and so they were just like, here's, you know, their past, present, and future hags, include them. And so I came up with my own stat blocks for them. I came up with like each of them had a feature, a passive feature, an action, a bonus action, and a reaction that were all based on the past, the present, and the future, respectively, to themselves. And that's pretty much how I designed them. And then I was super excited with them, super proud of them. They got to fight some of them in the game. Then after it started airing, they released the Wild Beyond the Witchlight, and I got to see the stat blocks, and I was like, I prefer mine. I
don't know what it is about. I don't know what it is about, like just the fear of like putting in something, you know, nasty and unique in a lot of these stat blocks. One of the main things I give advice in when it comes to encounter building, I love boss fights. I love things where it's like mostly for time. You know, your players are not like, if you put minions, use the 4th edition system for minions, where it's like they do damage, they have low HP, you can down them to 1 or 2 hits. It is cathartic. Your players literally get dopamine from killing the thing. Cool, my turn, I did something good. There's this amount less action economy on the field.
I took this guy off the field, and there's less actions against us.
But one of it is have a certain ability that is a little bit game changing, right? The first time I ran a certain encounter in my last campaign, I've done this before. There's a mechanic, and take it, chat. Listen, if you like it so much that you want to, you know, help support me in any way, follow me on Twitch. Jump into my Start Playing game, you know, I got a Ko-fi link. Rob and I talk about how important it is to, like, you know, support your GMs and stuff, but there's nothing more fucking terrifying than a mechanic that brings you to 1 HP. Not 0. 0 is this thing where it's like, well, that's not fair. 1 HP is, don't worry, I'm not going to hit you before your next turn.
You've got,
you know what I mean?
On my next turn, I'm going to die.
And
it's
so,
much more terrifying.
To give some sort of agency, I had this one thing where it was essentially a demon lord of undeath was being summoned, pulled through a portal by blah 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 lich blah 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 blah, and they let out this giant wave at the start of combat. This is also how I dealt with mass heal when I was trying to do a not 5-hour level 21 shot, right? Because account for mass heal.
Yeah,
you're not gonna be able to run a game past 17.
Don't counterspell it. Don't slog away for like 4 rounds and then they mass heal and then you go again. Like have them bam use mass heal. They feel like, oh, that spell was useful. I'm glad I had it. I've been useful. I didn't waste my spell slot, but it's still round 1.
Don't counterspell mass heal. Just don't do it. It's not fun. It's not an exciting thing. Counterspell that little revivify on their NPC friend that they fell in love with. Cool, that's great. Yeah, it's about the emotional catharsis. But I swear, just make sure you're learning how to deal with damage output as a GM. And so it's okay, make a charisma saving throw, which I love telling my players make a charisma saving throw, because the reaction's always like, charisma?
Charisma?
What?
But I don't that.
It is. Oh no, it is pulling at your life essence. It is pulling at your soul. It is pulling at everything that is in your diaphragm. And so they had to make a save. If they made the save, whatever HP they had remaining halved. Rounded down.
Yeah.
If they failed, 1 HP. At a barbarian with 360 HP, that's half of the mass heal right there. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And you find a way to describe it in a way that's terrifying. What are they feeling? What is happening in that moment? You make it a big thing, and that's how I started a level 20 combat once.
Yeah.
Right?
Nice.
And it was like this thing where it's like, they had been kicking ass leading the way up here. They're gods. Cool. You're gods, but you're on death's door. Are you going to pass through the door, or are you going to defend the door? Is the question you ask in the game.
It's a different form of gameplay when you're like, oh shit, we're on the back foot starting the thing. And both are fun. Like having some encounters from time to time that's like, oh, that was a breeze. We absolutely steamrolled them. It reminds us that we're absolute heroes and nothing can stop us. And then having that juxtaposed with like, oh god, we're gonna die. Oh god, we're still mortal. I won't spoil how or why because it's still several episodes away. But in the most recent table session for the Viva guys, it's the closest we've come to a TPK. And afterwards they were like, I genuinely thought you were trying to hint to us that we weren't meant to win that fight. And I was like, no, I was trying to hint to you that I'm not gonna have the fucking training wheels on anymore because I do not want to be pulling punches in this final fight. And I need to train you guys to know how to use tactics and know how to use your features because I am not going to be pulling punches in the final fight. So get used to being close to death because I'm going to be swinging for you.
Absolutely.
And they enjoyed it. They said that it was a lot more thrilling fight than they've had in a while. We've still got 8 questions to get through, so let's
tear through them.
Let's start getting through them. Fancy says, if you haven't covered this already, by the time we get to this, where do you want to get to? Where do you want the playmat to grow towards? What's your next goal? Is your goal to work with certain people or do certain things? Hire a small team?
Yes.
All of this.
Truthfully, it's productions, right? Like I want to meet everybody. When I mean everybody, I mean like I want to meet the folks from Dimension 20, Critical Role, other big startups. Places in the UK, I want to travel to Perth and New Zealand and meet you and do in-studio productions with you. I want to work in production. I want to produce things as a producer, writer, GM, player if I have to. I want to be hired as a player at a table. When I show up to a table, I think I'm not going to like talk about like, when I show up to a table, I really enjoy connecting and being my part as that ensemble and storytelling and finding ways to be emotional with that storytelling. That's what we did in Thirsty Sword Lesbians. It was like, okay, how do I affect everybody around me?
Right, yeah.
And so I want to work as a performer in that. I also want to do tons of things. I want to go to cons. I want to write. Whatever the industry brings me, I've learned so much about being as a performer where it's you adapt, right? Every skill I learned as an actor wasn't thrown in the fucking toilet. I'm learning video editing, I'm learning photography. It's like every skill you learn in the arts and in sort of production and interaction and any professional thing can adapt to something else. I want to do something that I find creatively stimulating. And so I'm very happy to adapt with that. But ultimately, I would love to GM. I would love to role play and have those just beautiful, tell beautiful stories that people can relate to. Mm-hmm. That's pretty much it.
Love it.
Yeah.
Fancy asks on my behalf, clearly, how do you keep yourself organized, both D&D and life? What tips do you have for other ADHDers?
Medicine.
Thank you, Fancy.
No, it's not for everybody, but no, once I started going on meds, it was this thing where I would hit the executive dysfunction wall a little bit less. But specifically keeping a schedule. I spoke to somebody
yesterday who was like, it was like having astigmatism that you didn't know about and then putting glasses on and going, oh fuck, this is how people can be. Yeah.
Yes. A couple things that keeping a schedule. I know it's the worst. Doing it on something like Google scheduling makes me feel like I'm gamifying it a little bit more. I don't have to like take something, write it down. It's organized. I can move it around. It is mine. And just honestly, now that I don't have to do labor work, that is just more emotionally draining, and you're putting your executive function to things that isn't something you enjoy. I have it a bit easier now because I am more motivated to do something that feels like it's a forward motion for myself. When you are working at something, it's easier the more success you get, because coming from just feeling like been in the dirt for so long, because it feels like the things you are doing are worthwhile and you are growing towards something. Literally, you get brain chemistry from that. You get dopamine from that feeling of like, yes, I'm doing the thing, and you are being navigated. You're creating neural pathways, which means I want to do more work because that work is successful. If that's not the case, you have to learn and teach yourself, I'm doing the work because I fucking love the work, and I would not be happy without the work.
Yeah.
So that is it. Fall in love with the thing, not the outcome, because the outcome can be dangerous. And this is coming from experience, right?
I like that. That's very good. Yeah. Good advice. Fall in love with the thing and not the outcome from the thing. Robert Tables asks, when you end up with player experience differentials at your table, how do you reward the experts while not punishing the new folks?
A couple things. From my experience, the experts tend to be on my side with helping the new folk and enjoy it. So luckily that's been good for me. Not always. I've had times where I've had to basically intervene and be the boundary for the new person when an experienced person was taking too much at the table and in a way that was stepping on the fun of the other people. It's been a while since that's happened for me personally. And since then, I have created a huge sort of shield of audacity where it's like, hey, I'm just going to talk about the thing right now. You're like, hey, this thing, in a way that's like, I'm not going to make the person feel bad, but I'm like, hey, let's address the thing that's happening right now.
Yeah.
And be very confident about my insight and analysis of it. But mainly it's sparsing time. And it's also sparsing like, hey, if this player talks a lot more, I check in, does that player actually want to talk more? Check in with them, interact with them. So maybe sometimes they don't. And it's really about just taking time and listening and asking. And it's hard when it comes to mechanics and combat and stuff. This is a well-built character. This is not. Any game I play is going to have a bunch of variables based on class and the dice, and things like that. So you're always adapting with variables, and you're always listening and trying to make sure that people are having fun, but also making sure that, say, the experienced player isn't taking their experience as a, like, I want to be validated for knowing these things.
Yeah.
That's something I can jump on quickly, and being like, hey, remember, this is a game of talking to each other and communication. And I really try to create a space where I don't have players just talking to me. That's my biggest peeve as a GM. If I do it for work, it's different. But at a home game table, if I have a player that's just talking to me, it's a problem.
Right.
They got to be talking to the people there because they're all the protagonists together, right? And
it's
so they're creating more fodder.
I find harder about online DMing than in person is a lot of that crosstalk is kind of by necessity of everybody's mic is picking up everything as if it's equal priority and equal importance. There's a lot less ability for them to just like turn to their neighbor at the table and just like have like a quieter discussion about what's happening, or like to remind the new player how to roll certain things can help the disparity of experience as well.
I think also setting like table etiquette with your party, being like, let's be mindful about how much we're talking. Let's be mindful about where we are taking scenes, how long we're taking scenes, so that we can bridge it into something that other people can be a part of as well. And be mindful, if every player does the 5% part of a GM that is the insight of like, let's be mindful about the other players, then that mindfulness is going to be, you put in 5%, the other 3 players are putting 15% towards you. Like, it's just, the math doesn't add up. But it's like, everyone's going to have a better time. It is an ensemble role-playing game. Playing online has its challenges a little bit, but it can also be more laid back. And if you find etiquette things like raise your hand, do the thing, and try to find ways to connect with the other players, you're putting in the writing work. As a player, if you're playing a campaign, especially a campaign that's homebrew, or a campaign that is like not exactly like you're following, Railroad or something, where it's like, oh, you know what you're doing at all times, it's kind of being shown to you, you are a little bit of a writer as well, right? You're writing the story, you're writing the interactions between the players at the table, so do some writing. What I mean by that is just like, hey, in your head, hey, but how can I connect with this person? And if you don't know how, talk to them between games. If I run a campaign, I have a warm up into the game and a check in afterwards. By warm up in, I'm like, hey, we had time to process what happened last week. Where are the characters at? At the end of the game is emotional response to what just happened, unprocessed as players. Whatever your thing is, talk to each other, right? And be kind to each other. Don't project. I mean, it's easier said than done, but if you feel weird about something, approach. If you want to just approach the GM, approach it with kindness. And if someone experiences a feeling and it feels a little weird, be empathetic towards them. It's important.
Wonderful. Centauri asks, is there backstory to your PlayMatt logo? Your little tiefling boy.
I'm bad at branding, and I love the thing itself. But I was like, I kind of want a like logo for my thing that's not something I made on Canva. So I commissioned an artist, and they made it for me. And I always see myself as a little bit of a demon or a devil or something. Succubus, I wanted to brand myself, incubus of sorts. I wanted to brand myself as a fledgling demon prince. I love the lore behind Graze because he's fucking horrible. Like, it's like he's basically the Greek god of demons, and I made a whole tiefling sort of ancestry that is, if you're a tiefling of this of this background, the Gracious Ones they're called. Granted, I'm probably gonna change his name for branding because I want to make and change and basically take this demon lord, be like, okay, what do I want to keep? What do I not want to keep? Why do I want it? What's the fodder that's interesting? I digress. But he does the Greek god thing where it's like, yeah, no, your literal biological father is this demon lord.
Yeah.
But so I don't know. I just like it. I'm a bit of a raunchy person, and you know,
like it.
Bisexual, polyamory person. You know.
Yeah. Open alert. Tempest says, is Matt attending GaryCon?
As of now, I'm not attending GaryCon. When is that one?
GaryCon is they're actually doing 2 weekends this year because it's the 50th anniversary of Dungeons and Dragons, and so they're doing Founders and Legends on I think the 18th-ish around March, and the regular GaryCon is a week later on the 25th of March.
No, that is around. Yeah, I'm gonna be in Maryland. That's around my partner's birthday. Yeah, I'm gonna be in Maryland. It's around my partner's birthday. I'm already planning, already to essentially, if possible, I don't know if it's gonna happen. Work Toronto Comic Con the 15th and 17th, fly out to the 18th, and then go to PAX East actually a few days after that. And so there's staying in the East Coast for all that stuff in terms of like just the Maryland, DC area. I guess PAX East is in Boston. Doesn't matter. All around there.
I want to get to PAX East at one point. Yeah. That's one of the other cons that I'd love to check. I'd love to check the PAX the PAX full complement essentially. The what is it? What PAX South is the one that disappeared. So there's PAX East. There's PAX West. There's PAX Unplugged.
There's PAX Unplugged. Yeah. I don't know.
Is PAX North still that thing? I can't remember. But all the PAX
certain cons are
PAX
costs.
Australia, because PAX Australia is a lot of fun, and I've loved it the last 2 years that I've been to it. So so I'll be going to that again in October. But yeah, maybe 2025. Maybe I do the PAXs instead of the GaryCon Gen Con.
I'm going to MagFest literally next week. My first time to that one. I'm going to probably Katsucon and PAX East. Those are the ones that I'm going kind of more as a visitor person. I'm gonna try to work all the Canadian cons because they're not great. Sorry guys. I mean, as a Canadian, our cons are not. They're underwhelming. They're big vendor halls. That's about it. But I'm gonna probably try to work them as a vendor to make some cash. Yeah.
Love it.
And Gen Con I'm doing for sure. Yeah.
Gen Con for sure. I'll see you at Gen Con. Rest on Laurels asks, what happened to the bikini calendar with Dave? When is that coming out? Is that a you thing or a me thing? Because I think Dave's probably promised both.
I don't know. You know what?
So Dave had this running joke about me and him being in metallic speedos with sunnies on and something or other when we met up at Gen Con, and he just sort of promised us this thing, and he ended up bringing the metallic speedos and sunglasses as well, but we never actually got around to taking the photos.
Let's set a Kofi or something goal that is just we hit that goal. The money split between the three of us.
Me and you and Dave.
Listen,
in speedos with sunnies.
Working hard on this body.
Yeah, man. Yeah. Been going to the personal training, working out. Got to show it off when it's still good, right?
Yeah.
I'm proud of it.
Also, fun thing. I'm doing my first professional cosplay at MagFest next week.
Oh, nice. What are you doing as?
Vaxeldon from Critical Role at Vox Machina. Nice. My partner's a professional cosplayer and is making an amazing Keyleth, and so we're gonna do that as So I'm excited. Very excited. Yeah,
that's gonna look good. I like that. I can see Jillian.
I'm also doing a low-key Roy Kent. That's why I'm keeping the beard from Ted Lasso. Yeah, I just have the beard and chest hair, and I can sort of do the voice. So. I don't know. If you haven't seen Ted Lasso, you should watch it. It's one of the I can count, I think, over the past couple of years, TV shows that I've gone like, this is really well written. This is really, really lovely. It's one of those shows. It's really good.
Okay, I shall check it out. Melville asks, no question. Just really appreciate the work that you both do. Entertainment is too often undervalued, and you are worth it, Matt.
Mel, you're amazing. Mel has hired me for a couple things and coachings and stuff, and so. Thank you. I really appreciate that. You know,
that's very nice.
Hell yeah.
And the last one is from Calexison, maybe.
Calexison.
That's
how I say it. Calexison. Yeah.
Calexison. It says, I am old school D&D where death was very normal. To get a level 1 to level 3, you would need to play 30 or more characters. Jesus. But now it feels like there may be only one death in a campaign. Is this just plot armor where you don't want to kill someone with backstory, or is it balancing of the game to be more like this?
This is a whole different game. I think it's a completely different game. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm. Death is a lot harder in 5e for sure, and that is by design. Like you can tell from the design of the game that death is much more difficult. Like it's relatively difficult to get somebody down to 0, and then when they're at the 0, they've got a 55% of chance of success every time, which is why I house rule it that 10 is a failure in death saves in my games, because then it's a 50-50 shot. But the 10 is a success, which means it's a 55% chance of success. A 1 is not an automatic death, but a 20 is an automatic get back up again, and so that's also unbalanced. 1 being 2 failures means that you still need at least 2 rounds. Even if you roll a 1 on your first death save, you've got at least a round and a half to and that's if you roll a 1. Then there's any amount of healing, of which there's a lot. There's healing items, there's healing potions, there's healing spells. It's relatively difficult to die in D&D by design, and I think on top of that, obviously there's some element of plot armor as well, like when it's more of a story and less of a game. Which I think is one of the changes that's happened between the earlier editions and the later editions, is that earlier editions were like, hey, it's a game, let's see if we can win. Let's see if you as players can come up with the smartest, strongest, most optimized, most min-maxed character that can get through this dungeon that is designed to kill you. And there was more of like a dungeon master versus player kind of thing in the earlier editions. And in later editions, it's more like collaborative storytelling together. And so there's plot armor involved.
What I find interesting about that is you're right. But I think over time, the emphasis on people, if you ask any player, what excites you about a game, as a world builder, it's you ask them that question, they're not going to say the fucking world building, they're going to say their character, and that's okay. That is okay, because it is immersion. It is the reason why they're not playing Skyrim for the 12th fucking time, is they're playing a tabletop game, right? Yeah. Why do you think Skyrim's so popular and people still play to this day? It's not because the combat mechanics are fun. Oh boy, it's not. It's because you get to customize a character from scratch. And you get to create this thing where in your head, if you talk to anybody about their characters in Skyrim, you are projecting onto this template an idea of a character, a story. And so people start caring about their characters. And so, if that's going to happen, it's got to be earned in a narrative sense. What happens when you're dying less? You're spending more time thinking about, well, who is this person going to be? How do I keep this interesting? Some people, it's more like, what's this build I want to play? The people who still play, it's a very old school mentality, but it's not a bad thing. They're different games, Not one is better than the other, but it's like, I want to build this really strong character to do this certain thing because they got the dopamine from the game, from succeeding at something. It used to be a lot harder to succeed at the thing. Now it's like, well, now it's about how do I do the thing the best, and that's okay. It's where do people get their joy from the game and why? A main thing I ask my players, the first question I ask a campaign player is, why do you want to play this character? Why do you want to play this person? In a narrative sense, right? Because that's the first thing you gotta ask. What am I having fun with here? Nobody sits down and asks the question, all right, what do I actually enjoy about this? Let's go through the bias, let's go through emotional response about it, and be like, what am I actually enjoying from this, right? People like whatever they like, but oftentimes it's the character itself. It's the thing they have agency over, is the thing they enjoy, right? And so the hero system in 5e, where it's like, yeah, you're super powerful, you can do the thing like you said earlier. If your class is doing the thing that they can do, it feels like, man, rogues, man, monks. And that's what people enjoy from the mechanic perspective. And you can make chances are, the creatures you put in front of them may be underwhelming, but if they're not, then it feels like it's like heroes fighting, gaining something. So by upping the intensity of combat in this different kind of game, you're kind of creating a little bit more of that tension of like, oh no, I'm fuck, It really is. It's really dependent on, I think, building tension, tone shifting, and what is the mood of what you're playing, right? What is the expectation of the kind of game you're playing? And so Dungeons and Dragons in first edition is not the same thing as Dungeons and Dragons now. They're different games.
Yeah, 100%. Well, that's all the questions we've got, and we're well over
Okay.
time as well. So we will.
Yeah.
I can hear the wizards. They finished their meal. They want some more entertainment. They need us back again. It's always on the grind. So we've finished our short rest. We look at each other, pack our meals and water skins away, and get our loots and lyres out.
We were Song of Resting the entire time, because that's a mechanic you remember that exists, right?
Definitely, everybody always remembers that. And now it's back to it. So as we're wrapping up this short rest, putting out the campfire, tell me, where can people find you? And
you can find me at twitch.tv/ThePlayMatt. I'm streaming in an hour and a half. I will be doing a horror game stream. If you want to come distract me and talk about D&D stuff, find me there. We're going to have some redeems and stuff for that, I guess. I'm going to turn the sound alerts up real loud, and I'm probably going to drink some wine to get through it.
Nice.
Also, tomorrow, I'm running a pro game tomorrow afternoon, which is a private game. But tomorrow night, if you like this, you can come watch me interview AJ Winters on my channel at 8 p.m. Eastern. I believe it's 9 a.m. Western Australian time. And my talk show is called In the Beholder's Eye. And
Nice.
we kind of go into the nitty gritty of game mastering and storytelling. And essentially, I like to understand what makes a GM love the GMing thing and world building and all the many facets involved with it, how they got into it and stuff like that. So that's going to be tomorrow night. Yeah, you can find me at Start Playing Games.
Check it all out.
All
of the links from your website as well, the ThePlayMatt DM.com. Did you go with DM for a reason and not GM? Just like
back then I was mostly just doing 5e, and now I'm kind of like, oh shit. But also, it was more like, and I was just offering D&D on the website.
Right. Yeah.
Maybe eventually. The website's not where I garner much business. It's more like a template of, hey, this person has a website. And find me on Discord if you want to book me.
Find all the links and stuff from there, yeah. And if you're here from the PlayMatt channel and you don't know who I am, thank you for sticking around for two hours without knowing who I am. I'm Robert Hartley, GM. I'm a full-time D&D content creator all over the internet. I'm most known for being the DM for a comedy group called Viva la Dirt League, but I do all sorts of stuff in my own right as well. I'm currently just coming up to the end of playing in a Dragonlance campaign over on the GM Workshops channel. We've got the last few episodes of that. It's very epic. And starting on Monday, in just 2 days' time, I'll be in a Planescape campaign on GaryCon TV, playing with the likes of Jason Charles Miller and such. So that's going to be a pretty big campaign. I'm very excited for it. So make sure to be following GaryCon TV for my new character in that. I'm very excited. I'm going to be playing a Plasmoid Druid, an oozy boy that can turn into other oozy creatures and stuff. It's going to be a lot of fun. Nice. I'm very excited for that character. So make sure to be following all of the places. Join my Discord and follow me on Instagram and stuff for any notifications of when I go live with things. Matt, any favourite streamers online right now? I always like to give the option to my guest.
There's a couple people. I always like raiding into a similar vibe, something that we're doing, right? Mm-hmm. Okay. Yes. You know them, but they're doing homebrew review stuff. Cinderblock Sally's live. I love Cinder.
I love Cinder.
Yeah. They're awesome.
Great guy.
Great guy.
You should also all check out Spidey NZ, who is currently online. He's an artist and he does he did all of my overlay stuff. He gave me all of this parchment and things. I put it all together, but he makes it all for me. He's basically my go-to artist for a lot of my things. My emotes are all Spidey NZ and such like that. So you should check out Spidey. He's currently making some sketches for Mortal Kombat. He's got a miniatures tabletop game that was Mortal Kombat. It's fallen through, so the board game isn't actually going to happen, but he's still just like working on it as a fan essentially. Nice. So, so we've got a raid. It sounds like Anita just raided us, and we're going to raid from there into another raid. I love a bouncing.
Taking them into the raid. It's a raid train.
I love a bouncing raid. The longest raid train I've ever been on was 4 or 5, I think. And then the person the person we raided into was also ending, but just didn't raid anybody. And I was like, God damn you!
It's usually the bigger, like if people stream for like 1,000 people, raiding is not often a thing that they do. People that come from other platforms and stuff. Yeah.
Yeah, well, unfortunate.
Then everybody went and had dinner, I guess. Coitus interruptus.
Thank you for being here, Matt. Thank you guys for being here in the audience. Thank you for all your questions and things. And I will see you tomorrow for the renewal of Twitch Tales. We're starting Arc 6 tomorrow. It's going to be a good one. See you then. Bye.
Friends, fans, and fine folk. Hope you enjoyed this video. Let me know in the comments what your favorite part was.